Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Fanfiction podcast. I'm so excited to have you here. Today, we're diving into a brand new story. Danmachi 6, The Renard Bunny Part 3, by Nuri_Kairos_Arcadia. Before we jump in, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you think. Chapter 6, Union. It's a pleasure to meet you, I'm Oda Shinano. Belle was surprised to hear that, remembering what Takumi Kazuchi had said about the other nine-tailed fox. I am Katsuki Yamato Belle. Greetings to you too, Miss Lovell. Oh yes, pleasure to meet you. Her attention immediately snapped back to Belle. You're like me, aren't you? Like you? Yes, the one I've been looking for. I can smell it. You're a fellow nine-tailed fox. The words set off the alarm in Belle's head, and it must have showed on his face as Shinano quickly waved her hands to reassure him. Please be assured I don't mean any harm. Belle looked around to see no one was paying attention before returning his attention to Shinano. I see. It's just I haven't told many people about that, and I'm currently keeping it mostly secret. I understand. Then would it be okay if you followed me to a private room? It would allow us to speak more freely. The white-haired boy nodded. Yes, that would be fine. Shinano began leading them when Amaterasu made her appearance. There you are, Shinano. You shouldn't wander off on your own like that. Though he couldn't see it, he could feel her pouting at the goddess. I'm not a child, Amaterasu-sama. You're right. After all, you're already going after another Renard, trying to seduce him with your charms and steal him away from another girl. I have to say I didn't raise you to be that kind of person. The blue-eyed Renard burst into a blush and denied all of Amaterasu's words. I am not trying to seduce him nor steal him away. Please have some decency. Amaterasu-sama. The goddess couldn't help but be amused. The Renard before her had always been aloof, serious, diligent, and so on. Honestly, she could go on forever with the praises, but it was very rare and hard to get her flustered, which also hinted that she did indeed take a liking to the other Renard with red eyes. How interesting. Before she could say anything else, the four were interrupted by Estrella's arrival. Hey, Amaterasu, still hanging around? Yes, one of my children ran off, only to find her flirting with Takes Renard. As I've said already, I was not flirting. Estrella giggled while Lyra and Kagaya immediately went on the assault. You know, I remember Estrella wondering if Elise wasn't enough. Guess it was. True, eh? Other than Ryu, who else is next? This Renard. Estrella-sama. Kagaya. Me. Oh, don't tell me. Are you aiming for our entire familia? Belle blushed at Lyra's words and slapped a hand on her mouth to prevent her from saying anything else. You're going to make poor little Elise jealous. Kagaya smirked at the redhead who glared at her. That's not true. I wouldn't get jealous over something like this. HMPH. Estrella felt a little embarrassed when she heard Lyra's words, but like Amaterasu, she giggled in amusement at the children before them. Like the goddess of justice had done before. Someone else interjected, announcing their presence, though their attention immediately went to Kagaya. Well, it's been a while, Kagaya-sama. Everyone turned to meet yet another Renard, except he had dark brown hair and dull amber eyes. He seemed to be weirdly fascinated with Kagaya as he approached her. He tried to grasp her hand only for her to dodge and take a few steps back. Akihiko Murakami? I believe I told everyone to return to their lodgings. If the eyes of Amaterasu, Shinano, and even Kagaya were anything to go by, the guy definitely wasn't liked. Amaterasu's tone had switched instantly from the friendly one to a more authoritative one. My apologies, Amaterasu-sama, but when I saw Kagaya I couldn't hold back. It's been several years already since I last saw her. Of course I had no intention to interrupt. To have so many beautiful ladies all in one place is a blessing to my eyes. I simply wished to converse a little with Kagaya and discuss the arrangements of our marriage. Ah, I see. Belle could tell right then why Kagaya didn't seem like a fan of the man. Marriage? I don't remember saying I'd marry you. Amaterasu kept quiet, wanting to see where this went, though she wondered how long she could stand the noble. Now Kagaya, you're 19 and as a prominent member, as well as being the heiress of the Gajuno clan, it's time you started looking for a partner. Not only that, but it is your duty and honor towards the family. And I believe I am a perfect candidate. I remember you having eyes only for Shinano-sama. Well, as you know, Shinano-sama is a Renard and a nine-tailed one at that, surely. You can't fault me for that. But that doesn't mean I'm not interested in you. You are insufferable. Please, all men are like me. They can't help but show interest when a omen is as beautiful as Shinano-sama, but please know my love is for you. I don't think so. Bell here is a perfectly honest and honorable man. The man's amber eyes turned to Bell and was shocked to see that he was also a Renard. He wasn't paying much attention during the meeting. He was too busy staring at the women after all. Not only that, but he was a first-class adventurer and was as handsome as a god could get. It irritated him to see someone who was better than him, and it showed as he frowned. I see. Heh, serves you right. Bell is in a different league, isn't he? Now feel inferior, you sack of shit. Unlike her appearance, Kaguya always had a rather vicious and unladylike personality, though. She normally only showed it to those she trusted. Elise then took that as her cue to implement her plan. Though it would help Kaguya out, the real intention was different from what Kaguya would have imagined. With a smirk, she clung to Bell's back, arms wrapped around his waist, and spoke. But I believe he is already dating Lady Lovell. That's right, he's my boyfriend, but with Kaguya showing a romantic interest in Bell, I allowed it to happen, and they have just recently started dating. Everyone else was floored by the sudden bomb that Elise dropped. Bell and Kaguya, though, understood what she was trying to do and played along without showing any surprise at the declaration. Obviously, Amaterasu sensed a lie, but knowing the purpose of the lie, she kept quiet, not wanting to have the noble Renard around any longer. What? Astrea blushed, but soon understood what was happening, even if she had to admit that. Hearing that, she couldn't help but feel jealous. Elise was dating him. Ryu kissed him and Kaguya clung to him. She may be a goddess, but she was also a woman, and seeing all her children clinging to the handsome and fluffy man did annoy her a little. Certainly. I have seen many with concubines, but I refuse to believe someone like Kaguya took the role of a concubine. Who said she is a concubine? Never heard of polygamy. She is treated and loved by Bell, just like he does with me. As long as I receive his love, I don't mind what other girls he decides to bed. Bell's face turned the same color as his eyes when Elise said the last two words. That's right. Do you perhaps have a problem with that? Kaguya wrapped her arms around Bell's left bicep as she spoke and made sure to rub her chest on his arm, tightly sticking to him. You're actually dating him? Of course. Kaguya then kissed Bell on the cheek, an easy act for her as she had done the same when showing him her new outfit. Though embarrassing, Bell suppressed the blush and wrapped his tail around Kaguya's waist while his arm went around her shoulder before bringing her in close. I see. Well, Shinano-sama, there are a few days before the tournament and the ball. Would it be possible to ask for some of your time? This was the first time Bell heard about the ball, but he decided to ignore it. Unfortunately for him, today was the day everyone felt like using the white-haired boy to escape undesirable situations. Apologies about that, but I have already promised my time to Bell here and Amaterasu-sama. As a Renard who lived a completely different life, I was interested in hearing some of his stories, including the ones of the dungeon. Besides, I believe Amaterasu-sama and Takemikazuchi-sama will want to meet and catch up. It would only be reasonable if I was there as well. Shinano grabbed onto Bell's right arm and made sure to press her chest into him to show off to the man. The noble looked less than pleased for obvious reasons, and if not for his high position, albeit only because of his father, he would have been removed instantly. Meanwhile, Elise felt her eye twitch. She had never been bothered with Ryu or any other members of her familia, but for some reason seeing the Renard be so handsy irked her. Moreover, she was a gentle and kind girl, which is exactly why it confused Elise even more as to why she felt so irritated. Either way, she knew how troublesome nobles were, and she looked bothered, so she kept quiet. Then, may I ask for a dance? Oh, well, I'll think about the ball when we get to it. There is no need to rush. Fair point. In that case, I'll take my leave. And just like that, he left, allowing the others to breathe out a sigh. Amaterasu shook her head As her attention returned to Astrea, her tone turning more friendly. Apologies about him. Without his father he acts out of line quite often. The goddess of justice nodded. I see. Where is the imperial family? Are they not here? They are. Unfortunately there was a problem and had to skip out on the meeting. But they will definitely be present at the tournament and the ball. Seeing Belle's confused face, Astrea briefly explained to him that 2 days after the tournament, the Ganesha familia had scheduled to host a party for everyone, even lower ranked familiars all the way down to E-rank familiars. Now, if it's not a problem, I would like to speak with Belle privately. Shinano's tale did little to hide her excitement, which again irritated Elise. Why so interested? Shinano quickly whispered in her ear, and when she did the goddess eyes went wide in surprise. Her eyes immediately snapped to Belle, who nodded. The brilliant smile that sprouted on her face hearing that definitely showed she was the goddess of the sun. I see. Take your time then. Astrea, girls and Belle, it was nice meeting you all. I hope we get to see each other again. The children all bowed as the goddess left. Astrea then bid her farewell, taking everyone, except Elise, who insisted on staying behind. With only the 2 Renards and the red head left, Shinano led them out to a cafe and asked for a private room so that they could have their conversation. Once the waiter finished delivering their orders and the door closed behind him, Shinano turned to Belle and showed her 9 tails. Seeing as it was just the 3 of them, Belle unfurled his own, letting them free. The 2 Renards, never having seen another of their kind like them, admired each other's true form. They stared for a while before Belle struck up a conversation. I feel so excited to finally see someone like me. The blue-eyed Renard giggled hearing that. You have beautiful tails, Belle. Thank you, you too. The 2 began recounting their life stories to each other, filled with their past, jokes and funny moments that had happened over the past 14 years. He was surprised to also learn that she was the same age as him. Haha, no way. Not funny, Belle. It was really embarrassing. Elise watched in complete silence as the 2 had fallen in their little world. The short meeting turned into a long conversation that extended into lunch and beyond. Though she was completely forgotten, what really irked her was the way Belle smiled at Shinano. It wasn't the same loving smile he showed to her, but it was a genuinely joyous smile. She understood that it was a life-changing moment for Belle. He was meeting someone like him for the first time. Still, it made her feel depressed the way they hit it off. That is how Elise asked me out. I can say that accepting her offer was one of the best decisions of my life. Nothing make me as happy as having her around. Hearing that and feeling his arms around her helped improve her mood, but it didn't shake the doubt that had seeded in her heart. For the next few hours the 2 kept talking and flirting, at least that's what Elise thought, without taking a break. When their time together finally came to an end, Belle paid for the tab before accompanying her back to her hotel like the gentleman he was. While walking back, Belle noticed that Elise was unusually quiet. Her bright smile and the brilliant glint in her eyes was missing. She seemed deep in thought, pondering over something. Worried, Belle grabbed her hand and gave it a gentle squeeze. Sorry, Belle. About what? It's nothing. She gently squeezed back and leaned onto his shoulder. The rest of the way was silent but comfortable. When he got back home, they were greeted by the rest of the familia. Elise was going to go to her office, weird decision by the captain, when Belle pulled her to her room and locked the door. Belle, what's the mat dash? Her lips were sealed with a passionate kiss by Belle. He held nothing back, which Elise quickly and hungrily reciprocated. Her hands instantly found the back of his neck and his cheek. Belle's hand firmly held her hips while his tails wrapped around her body. That should be my question, Elise. Tell me, is something troubling you? The girl looked down, not meeting his intense gaze. Her attention, however, was brought to his rubellite irises as Belle cupped her chin and lifted it up. Elise, tell me. Please, I can't help you if you don't tell me. Well, it's about Shinano. What about her? You seemed really happy and got lost in your little world dash. Elise, could it be that you're jealous? The question caused the girl to go silent. Fut, ha ha ha, of all the things. Elise looked offended as Belle laughed at her. I'm sorry, Elise. It's just that you're the one who was promoting a harem. I was. And when I think about Lion or Kagaya it's fine. But when I saw you with Shinano, I felt like she was going to steal you from me. I'm being possessive and jealous. I know I'm being silly and dash. No matter what I will never leave you. And I think it's really cute. How you get jealous I mean. She was then met with another kiss that made her mind hazy. You don't mind. I don't. You know, seeing how many nobles were after you made me realize that I need to make sure that people know you're mine, and mine alone. She then felt his tongue followed by his canines on her neck. He gently nibbled, before biting. Instead of feeling pain, however, Elise felt a pleasure she couldn't explain. Artilda. Elise slapped a hand over her mouth as she suddenly let out a loud and throaty moan that, unknown to her, was heard throughout the manor. Beltilda, did you just give me a hickey? I hope you don't mind. Can I have another one? And so he obliged. Just this time she didn't let the moan escape her lips. Tomorrow we're going to have nice long date. How about that? Elise smiled and nodded. Then after the date I'll give you a special present. A special present? Belle winked before turning back to the bed and laying down. The conversation with Shinano had drained him, so he decided to take a long nap. Elise was curious about the present, but it was clear that he wouldn't say what it was. Instead she laid down next to Belle and hugged him before drifting off to sleep as well. The lovers woke up just in time for dinner, which had been made by Astrea herself. As Belle and Elise joined the rest of the familiar at the table, the goddess clapped to get everyone's attention. Immediately the girls all went quiet and waited for her to speak. Thank you. Now, as you all know, the tournament will be held in 4 days. Ryu, Belle, I'd like to congratulate you two for participating, and in view of that I want Elise, Kagaya and Lyra to take turns in these coming days to train the two. Of course the other girls. Welcome to join the spa, but try not to make it a habit to get knocked out by Belle just to receive a lap pillow, all right? Hearing that, some of the girls giggled to themselves, particularly the ones responsible of that. With that out of the way, the dinner started and everyone enjoyed the taste of Astrea's home cooking. Belle's eyes lit up, his ears wiggled excitedly and his tail swished euphorically, causing all the girls to coo at the cute side of the Renard. This is delicious. You'd make a great wife, Astrea-sama. In his joy he didn't register the comment he dropped on the goddess, who exploded in embarrassment. Many of the girls blushed, some more naughty smirked at the guardian of justice. Already planning to make my goddess your wife, Belle. Hearing that, Belle froze. The fork going towards his mouth stopped midair as his tail went stiff. His eyes turned to the smug Elise, then to the blushing and stuttering form of Astrea. Did I say that out loud? You sure did, Belle, and look at Astrea-sama. The goddess let her imagination run wild, imaging as she cooked for Belle, who returned after a long day of work. She pictured herself offering dinner, a bath, or herself before kissing him. Then came an image of the two of them sitting under a tree with children in their laps. The dreams got wilder and wilder until Kagaya's words snapped her out. Astrea-sama, already dreaming of little godly Renards running around Hiya. What? Fufu, to think our lovely goddess was such a hopeless romantic. Then again, many in Orario see you as some sort of mother figure. I guess Belle might be able to grant you that wish. Kagaya. Lyra, I don't remember raising you two to be so naughty and brazen. I mean, Lyra was already like this, but even you, Kagaya. Sorry, Astrea-sama. When it comes to you, Belle and Ryu, I just can't help myself. I certainly understand how Lyra feels, and many others probably. And I have to admit it feels great. You too. Stop teasing, Astrea-sama. Ryu, jealous that she is stealing Belle from you. What? And no. The entire table began giggling at the expense of the blushing goddess, Renard and Elf. All right, enough of your teasing, you mischievous little girls. Off you go. Astrea dismissed them until it was only Belle, Elise, and Ryu. Me and Belle will be taking the day tomorrow off for a long, nice date. Again. You will understand when you begin dating Belle as well, my dear lion. The sole thought sent Ryu running off with a blush. We'll start the training the day after. Fine. But Belle needs to return to the hostess after the ball, alright? MIA. Will skin us all if he stays any longer. Haha, true. Last thing I want is MIA hunting down my familiar. Then we'll see you tomorrow, Kamisama. Good night. Good night, Elise, Belle. Off we go. Elise and Belle wore the same clothes they had used on their first date and left the manor early. In the morning, after saying goodbye to Estrella and the other girls, with joined hands they headed for the walls where they cuddled as they watched the sun rise. Above the horizon, she happily enjoyed the warmth of the Renard's fluffy tail as he tamamo balled the two of them, their heads peeking out of the ball of fur. They stayed there for an hour before Belle unfurled his tails, like a budding flower's petals, blooming, but instead of a flower head 2 bodies came out. Elise giggled and pecked the Renard on the cheek before helping him up. What now? Breakfast, I'm starving. Hee. Then lead the way, Belle. He grabbed her hand and led her to the hostess of fertility, the least she could do, to appease. MIA was to buy food at her place. When he entered, MIA turned to him with a look that bordered between a frown and a smile. Finally decided to show up, eh? Belle scratched the back of his head. Sorry, MIA, I've been a little busy. I'll be back after the ball is over. The ball, you participating? According to Estrella, all familiars until E rank are invited. So yes. Fine, but I'm working you to the bone when you're back. You'll be cooking for thousands. Yes, Mama. Hearing that, she cracked a smile. Alright, what do you 2 lovebirds want? Strawberry pancakes with a lot of whipped cream for me and orange juice. A chocolate roulade for me and an orange juice. Coming right up. Belle and Elise then sat at the nearest table where Anya served them drinks. Hey, White Naya. Hey, Anya, are you doing okay? Yep, Naya. I just wished Nayu came back. It was much easier, Naya, with Nayu. Around. Haha, I will in a week or so. Then a Niak it is. Anya served them their orders soon after, before leaving them to themselves. Sat next to each other. His tail acted as if it had a mind of its own and quickly found its way to Elise's waist, which brought a smile out of her. But she had also noticed that ever since this morning, Belle hadn't kissed her once. And beyond the tail wrapping around her waist and holding her hand, the Renard hadn't sought out her touch and warmth like he usually did. For now she'd let it go, but she would get her answers. Finishing their plates, the 2 paid MIA before leaving for their next destination. Apparently Asfi had invented a new magic item, which allowed to record moving images into what Hermes had called a movie. The messenger god had immediately funded a theater group to make a movie of a tale of an ancient hero called Epimetheus. Seeing the shining stars that were Belle's eyes, Elise couldn't find it in herself to deny the young man from becoming a member of the audience. As they sat down, Elise made sure to wrap the tail around her body and hold the remaining length in her hands, lest she wanted the wagging limb to excitedly swing around and impairing the other people's views. When the images started moving, Elise was shocked by how good it looked. It was as if the images had come to life, recounting the story of the failed hero. Just like Belle, she soon found herself immersed in the animated story. The story was set long before the Fianna Knights and Argonaut, in the city of Olympia, where Prometheus had let a flame fall, the primordial flame that let the city prosper. Epimetheus became the first to be able to wield the flame, seeing that a god from the heavens dropped a divine weapon for him to use. From there he became a great hero who protected the lands of Olympia and beyond. He led expeditions to save countries and people across Gakai. In a world that was in chaos due to monsters and plagues, the rise of a hero gave people hope. However, when the time came to face the strongest of monsters, he failed. Antares, Behemoth, Leviathan and the Black Dragon. Every assault carried out ended in failure. Men were lost, and the monster wreaked havoc. As a hero who had small achievements, his failure overshadowed his kindness. The whole world was disappointed and came to resent him, disowning him and calling him names with disdain, which marked the end of his story. This failure caused him to lose the title of hero, which would be obtained 1,000 years later by a clown, who would become the first true hero and begin the age of the heroes. Following many years, the man was offered a chance to redemption. A blind poet, once a great hero, came to him. Listening to him, Epimetheus agreed to assist humanities. First, attempt to reach the dungeon. The attempt, however, was once again a failure. With that, the once kind hero lost hope and turned bitter. Called a fool and mocked, his hatred festered and grew to spite the people he once worked to save, before he could go out of control. However, monsters invaded Olympia and the land was destroyed. With his home lost, his people feasted on, and his family dead, he truly stopped being a hero. From then, Epimetheus vanished, forgotten to the sands of time. No one knows what happened to the failed hero. The end. Elise and Belle were moved by the story, but while Elise pitied the man, Belle did not. It would have been an insult to the hero who gave it all to protect those he loved. Though he failed, his valiant attempt lit a fire in Belle. A will of iron, determined to become a legendary hero was forged, and unknown to him, something in his soul resonated with his desire. "You okay, Belle?" Belle snapped out of his daze and looked at his girlfriend with a gentle smile. "Yes, I have to admit, the story of Epimetheus is one of my favorites. It's not all glory and joy. It shows the true harshness that is reality, the cruelty this world has to offer. Though he failed in the end, I admire him for what he did and tried to be." Elise smiled and leaned into him. "I know you'll become just as great a hero as him." "Thank you, Elise." With joined hands, the two left the screening room and headed to the livelier market area. Like always, the people all greeted the cheery redhead, showing how popular she was in Orario. But as everyone saw how joyous her expression was whenever she looked at Belle, they stopped pestering her. Everyone deserved to relax, and Elise had done much for the city, so they stayed clear to let her enjoy her time with the Renard. The redhead then saw something that caught her eye and made a slow sprint, dragging Belle along. "Look at this." When they arrived at the stall, Belle noticed how her eyes had found their way to a small red pendant made of tree-like branches that were shaped like a heart. The pendant was visibly hollow inside, and it could be opened to place something of small in it. Her eyes then went to some of the other products, but Belle could see how brilliant her eyes were when she had looked at the pendant. While she was browsing through the other items, Belle, without hesitating, asked the shopkeeper for the pendant. Elise, too busy looking at the many necklaces and bracelets, hadn't noticed Belle buying the pendant. When her attention did return to him, he was looking at her with a smile, his tail wagging gently. He briefly chuckled before offering his hand, which she took. "What's so funny?" "Nothing. Just thought you looked really cute the way you were so excited." "Ah, you teasing me?" "Nope, I genuinely thought that." She kept smiling as she wrapped herself around his arm. "Where to now?" How about stopping by the fair? I heard that with all the foreign representatives and nobles, a lot of people and merchants have gathered. Perhaps we'll find something of interesting there. It's just 10 minutes from here." "Hee. All right, you lead the way then, love." When they arrived, they saw that an entire portion of Orario's market area had been changed for the foreigners to trade. The normally empty plaza was filled to the brim with people and stalls of all kinds. Races of every type from every corner of the world were present, trying to sell their wares. Wow! The two marveled the sight before them. Though it wasn't the first time Elise saw this kind of event, even within Orario, unless there was a festival, it was hard to find such densely packed areas. With an excited wag of his tail, he led Elise through the market. The girl watched with a wide smile as Belle experienced such a large gathering for the first time in his life. "Now that I think about it, let me lead you." Hee. You're probably more familiar with this." Taking his hand, she led him straight through the maze of people and to a side, which he would be interested in. She had noticed the moment they had arrived how the stalls around the right area belonged to Far Eastern merchants, wanting to let him experience his hometown's culture to its fullest for the first time. Together with him, she brought him to the closest stall. "Welcome." The stall was selling kitsune and tengu masks, much to the amusement of Elise, as she currently stood beside her Renard. "A Renard. How rare to see one here in Orario. Please excuse my behavior. It is an honor to have you here." The way the merchant suddenly turned polite and bowed to Belle gave Elise a good idea of how important Renards were in the Far East. Belle, on the other hand, felt a little flustered and simply thanked him. We would like 2 Kistune masks. One red and white while the other one white and green. Exchanging a pouch of Valis with the masks, Elise gave the red and white one to Belle while she kept the other one. Seeing some of the people, Elise decided to put hers on the side of her head while Belle covered his face with the mask. Mow, like that I can't see your handsome face, Belle. Hee, then you'll have to wait, love. She kept pouting but settled with a head pat as he gently ruffled her hair. Fine. The two then went around to explore more of the Far Eastern stalls, enjoying the warmth of each other's hands. They continued until noon when the two began feeling hungry. Seeing as there were plenty of food stalls as well, they looked around when a specific smell caught Belle's attention. Tracking the scent with his nose, he led Elise to a small cat that sold a variety of foods. They even offered seats at the small cat which the two occupied. Looking at the menu, there were 3 things that made Belle's eyes shine. Without hesitating, he instantly ordered all 3. A bowl of what they called tonkotsu ramen, a plate of fried tofu, and a plate of multicolored mochi. His nose sniffed the bowl and instantly picked up the rich scent of the dish. In the broth he saw golden noodles, pork, egg, and what they called tare, which was made of bacon-infused sweet soy miso tare. Belle's nose also instantly picked up the scent of scallions, enoki, mushrooms, sugar, garlic, ginger, and a few ingredients he had never smelt before, like mirin and sake. Such a combination was completely new to Belle, but the moment he tasted, his ears and tail wiggled like crazy, which the people around all found extremely adorable. The fried tofu was also incredibly good, which according to the owner of the shop was commonly loved amongst the Renards, and then came the mochi. Belle squealed when he bit into the soft and spongy texture filled with different flavors depending on the color. Elise silently enjoyed watching Belle's reactions to the new foods, but she felt left out, so with no spoken words, she poked his cheek before opening her mouth. Belle chucked before feeding her a mochi straight out of his hands. She could definitely tell why he liked it so much. You're so excited, Belle. Of course I am, all these new traditions and foods. I can't help it. Think we could go cuddle under the tree over at the park after you finish? Belle stared at her for a moment before instantly stuffing his mouth with the remaining food and gulping it down all in one go. He paid the owner and was got up, offering his hand to his partner. All this happened in a matter of seconds, which made Elise feel like burst out in laughter, but simply giggled with a shake of her head before accepting his help. Let's go, my goofy and handsome fox. Belle sat down under the tree of the closest park with Elise on his laps. His arms circled around her waist while she leaned back into him. Elise had to admit that just quietly sitting down and basking each other's warmth was just as nice as any other activity other than kissing. That is the one thing she would prefer doing. No words, only strokes of her hands over his, and warm embraces were exchanged. The two sat there and watched as the city beneath them went on with their life. It filled Elise with accomplishment to see the peace and smiles of the citizens and foreigners, the things she fought for every day of her life, protecting them from the dungeon, from savage monsters, from Everless, from other deranged people. She then spun around until she was straddling Belle with her thighs. He had to admit that, without her armor hiding her heavenly proportions, this felt really good. He had only noticed after first embracing her, but Elise's body was incredibly gifted. Every part of her body was incredibly soft, and they were pressed up against him, though being in public meant he only kept his hands to her waist and back. Elise grinned, seeing the slight blush on the Renard's face, and kissed him right there. But again she was left a little confused when Belle only offered small pecks instead of starting a make-out session with her. She wouldn't push it, but that didn't mean she couldn't pout at the lack intimate affection she was getting, which Belle noticed and offered a sheepish smile. Sorry, Elise. I promise I'll make it up to you. It's got to do with the surprise I have for you later today. The more you want me, the better. Humumu, it'd better be a good surprise. But Belle, you have no idea how much I want you and need you every moment of every day. Thank you, Elise. His ears then perked up and eyes soon followed. The captain of the Astraea, Familia, noticed and tilted her head in confusion. What's the matter? I think I hear a lost child. How do you know they are as lost? They are sobbing. All right, lead the way. Elise helped Belle up, who then led them to the source of the sound. Just as he said the moment they rounded the corner of the first building, a small child with brown hair, fox ears, and a small yet fluffy tail stood there. Her brown teary brown eyes made it look like was sobbing just as Belle said, and she seemed surrounded by a group of men, though they didn't seem to be causing problems. What's going on here? The men were startled, but seeing their situation they immediately explained they weren't harassing the child, just trying to help her. Looking at them, Elise had to admit they didn't look like thugs and they hadn't approached the child, just maintained their distance. We found her here sobbing. We tried asking for details that could help us tell who she was looking for, but she seems too scared of us, so she froze up. Elise nodded and approached the child before crouching. With her best smile she tried questioning the girl. Hey there, could you tell me your name? The little girl in front of her started sniffing the air before she broke into a sprint. The little Renard girl shot past Elise and straight into Belle's legs, who yelped, not expecting the sudden tackle. But he couldn't bring himself to separate the little Renard when he watched how she clung to his legs with trembling hands, her face buried into his thigh as she nuzzled it. The tears were still there, but her sobbing began slowing down as she found her source of comfort. Mao. The men chuckled when they say how Elise pouted at the child, who had completely ignored her and went for Belle instead. It's most likely because the young man there is a Renard like her. She must have recognized the familiar scent on him. I see. Elise, however, kept on pouting. Either way, we'll take it from here. Thank you for helping her. No problem. The men all left while Belle patted the child's head, gently ruffling her hair. He then crouched down once he saw her grip on his pants loosen. Hey there. Hick, hi. Belle kept on stroking her head while he asked the questions. Say, what's your name? I'm Akari. Well then, Akari-chan, how about going back to the market area for now? She nodded, but just as she let go of Belle, he noticed that her tails suddenly split. His eyes widened in shock. You're a nine-tailed fox. Elise was startled when Belle suddenly raised his voice, but Akari, who recoiled back, suddenly seemed scared of approaching Belle even if he was a Renard. Belle, you scared her. Sorry. Please don't tell anyone. Hick. Okasan and Wani-chan said I should always keep it a secret. Only them and Amaterasu-sama know. Belle smiled as an idea came to his head. Then how about this? When his tail divided into 9, her eyes instantly went from teary to bright and shining like a star. He slowly poked her cheek with one of his tails, which broke her out of her trance. She immediately took to playing with his tails, which drew a giggle out of Belle and Elise. Is this what a child with Belle would look like? Elise couldn't help but imagine having a child with Belle, playing with his tails, while she watched as she prepared dinner for them. The life a married couple. What a blissful life. Come here. Belle had opened his arms and Akari flew into him, giggling as he patted her head. Good girl. You're also a nine-tailed Renard. Yes, but just like you, only a few people know of it. So you don't tell anyone, and I don't tell anyone. It will be our little secret. Well, ours and Elise's. Akari looked at Elise with doubtful look. Can she be trusted? Goo. Elise felt an arrow through her heart hearing that. Of course you can. Belle wrapped his tails around her to show he trusted her, which in turn seemed to dispel some of her worries. Seeing her look brighten a little, the captain showed her a smile, before slowly approaching her until her hand was over the little Renard's head. With careful and gentle strokes she rubbed her head, which Akari seemed to enjoy. Okay, I can trust you. Belle then picked the girl no older than 5 years old up in his arms before standing. She wrapped her tiny hands around Belle's neck as his arms held her up at chest level. The group of 3 then left the dark alley and walked back to the populated market area, making sure to hide their tails as they returned to the public area. Tell me, Akari, are you here alone? She shook her head. My Wani-chans were with me. Do you remember where you got separated? She shook her head once again. We were together when I saw something shiny. It was pretty, so I ran after it. But when I looked around, I couldn't find them. They were gone. Any way to contact them, or perhaps a place you could meet them at? Her eyes became teary again as she shook her head. Okay, calm down. It's fine. Me and Elise will be with you until we find them. Okay. She hugged him tightly and nodded. Elise from her side smiled brightly at the sight. It was just adorable. Then tell me about your Wonnie-chans. What do they look like? They got really big boobs. Belle felt like face-palming, while Elise giggled. I mean, in her defense, that is indeed a noticeable detail. But Elise kept that thought to herself. What about their hair and eyes? Well, 2 of them have brown hair like me with brown and red eyes, 2 have white hair and blue eyes, while 1 has purple hair and yellow eyes. How many sisters does she have? The duo of adventurers proceeded to look around the market area for any of her sisters, but ended up empty-handed. Throughout the entire time, Belle and Elise kept the girl entertained, buying her little souvenirs, snacks, and playing games with her. It was the best day she ever had, but not only for her but for Belle and Elise as well. Though this was completely outside of what Belle had initially planned, Elise and Belle enjoyed taking care of her like a small family. Nee, can you jump as high as possible? Why? I want to see what Orario looks like from high above. I heard adventurers with a blessing have supernatural abilities. Belle chuckled and moved to a more secluded area so that he wouldn't startle people. He tightly held onto Akari before gathering his strength and jumping. The white-haired Renard blasted through the sky high above the city. When Akari opened her eyes, she looked in. Admiration at the sight laid out before her eyes. She could see Orario and the vast lands beyond its walls extending far over the horizon. Wow! Unknown to them, Elise wasn't the only one who was watching the two. Another group of people spotted the Renards high in the sky. This is amazing, the child shouted as they began free-falling. Just before landing, Belle let all 9 of his tails extended, slowing down their fall. Belle then landed with the grace of a swan as, without a sound, his feet touched the ground. How was it, Akari? Wasn't Belle incredible? It was Nee is super amazing, Elise. Her giggle was interrupted when a group of people barged into the area. Armed men along several Renards, all matching the hair and eye color that Akari had mentioned. And Elise had to admit they certainly were as gifted as the little girl said. A purple-haired Renard seemed to be leading them but froze when they saw Belle, who immediately hid his tail, but not fast enough as she saw them for a split second. Yuan-hand Akari. She aimed Hitachi at Belle before Akari jumped out of his arms and stood before him with arms wide open. Wait, Wonnie-chan, Nee is a good person. The newly arrived Renard, however, didn't seem to buy it until someone else made her way forwards. Belle. Shinano. Soon catching up was also Goddess Amaterasu, who was surprised to see Belle. Ara, if it isn't Take's child. Belle bowed and greeted the goddess. It's okay, Musasha. Now lower your weapon. Slowly but surely the blade was lowered until it was sheathed. Amaterasu quickly dismissed everyone but the Renards around her. All the armed warriors left the area while the goddess' attention went back to Belle. I never expected to meet you here. Me and Elise were on a date when we found Akara-chan. The little girl jumped back into the young man's arms, surprising the Far Eastern group with how attached she had grown to Belle. There is no need to hide your tails, by the way. Everyone currently here was informed. I apologize if I did it without your consent, but I promise you that the secret is safe with us. Belle then unfurled his tails, trusting Amaterasu's words. Shinano slowly made her way to Belle before wrapping her arms around his. Though Elise had mostly gotten over it, her gaze narrowed on the blue-eyed Renard, thing which wasn't missed by the others to the exception of Belle and Shinano. Shinano-san, there is no need to be so close this time, is there? It's fine. Besides, you never know when that annoying noble might pop out. The other Renards were all whispering, not believing their eyes at the sight before them. In front of them, 18 white tails swished right and left before Akari joined them. 2. In that moment, Amaterasu also remembered that she had yet to meet Take Mikazuchi. Well, we didn't have much of a chance to speak last time, Belle. Not with how excited Shinano was. No, we did not. Do you think you could arrange a meeting place and time with your familiar? I'd like to hear a little about you and Take, and his familiar as well. It's been a while after all. Of course. I believe the hostess of fertility would work just fine. Ah yes, I heard about the place. Very well. After having finalized the details of the meeting, Emma Terezu took Akari in her arms. Before bidding goodbye and leaving with the other Renards in tow, Elise latched onto his arm as they were alone again. The sun had begun sinking and the moon to rise. Their final destination for the day before they'd head to have dinner, however, was the last place Elise expected to visit. The graveyard, the place where adventurers were buried. Elise's eyebrow scrunched up, but she was sure he had his reasons. Elise, I heard that 7 years ago you fought Alfia and Zard. Is that true? Hearing the sudden question surprised her. She had no idea why he decided to bring up the names of 2 old adventurers. Yes, amongst the Everless forces, in the assault that happened 7 years ago, the 2 of them were there. Otter fought against Zard while my familiar fought against Alfia. Do you know who they used to be? Of course. Anyone would. Gluttony of Zeus familiar and silence of Hera familiar. But why? Bring it up now. Belle stopped walking. Elise wondered why, and as she looked forward she understood why. Before she knew it, she was standing before the graves of the Zeus and Hera familiar. Because I want to tell you the truth. About what? About who I am, why I am an adventurer, and what I wish to do here in Orario. When you asked before, I would always refuse to answer, but today, I wanted to tell you the truth. Elise knew where this was going. She understood, but she wanted to hear it out of his mouth. Remember when I told you of the floor bosses below the 59th floor? Yes. The person who raised me, my grandpa, was in fact Zeus. Ever since he took me in, he raised me to be a hero. The hero I vowed to become. The last hero. For that I joined the familiar at a young age and worked to become stronger. He told me the tales of every hero out there and their feats, the myths of the legends of old. Albert, Epimetheus, Argonaut, Achilles, Perseus. Until he told me of his familiar, their legacy and their downfall. They were true heroes, the only ones of this age. They did the impossible, defeating the Behemoth and the Leviathan. But when they were defeated by the Black Dragon, they came home to a city of traitors. Like the story of Epimetheus, they were despised and ridiculed. They faced betrayal and injustice as they were slaughtered before being casted out, exiled to never return. His tail slammed on the ground with enough force to crack the ground, leaving behind a small crater. Seeing the rage in his eyes made her take a step back. But there was no hatred, just pure wrath. They fought and protected the city for 1,000 years, brought hope and smiles, and they were repaid with the arrogance and selfishness of this city. These ungrateful people were not there to fight with their life on the line every day. They would not have such peace, if not for them, for their sacrifice. Elise stayed quiet and listened with a heavy heart. The day I joined the Zeus familiar, I promised Zeus that I would carry on their legacy, complete the 3 great quests, and be the last hero of this age. The day I joined, I vowed to reinstate their honor and glory, to make everyone in Orario see the mistakes in their way and make them feel the shame they should have felt for their undeserved cruelty. I may have never known them in person, but I know they were astonishing heroes. I admire them and respect their heroism and valor. That is why I became an adventurer and why I will become stronger. Stronger than anyone has or ever will be. I owe it all to Zeus who saved me, and until the day my breath runs out, I will not allow myself to fall or give up. Belle was crouched down before the slate of Maxim, the captain of the Zeus familiar. Even after their death and the suffering he went through, he never gave up hope. In humanity, he never blamed them. So I will not either. His voice had fallen to a quiet and soft tone, filled with grief but also hope. For a better future. His hand delicately hovered over the stone and traced the symbol of the Zeus familiar. Belle. Elise crouched down next to him and hugged him tightly. I'm sorry, and thank you for telling me, and for not losing hope in Orario. I promise you, I will do everything I can to help you. I will stand by you even if the whole world were to turn against you. I will never let you go. The two walked down the main road as the brilliant night sky stretched overhead. Hundreds of people roamed the streets, adventurers and civilians alike. they found the first restaurant. They couldn't sat down for a romantic dinner, which luckily wasn't interrupted by anyone. After finishing up the dinner, they made their way back towards the Stardust Garden. Belle, when am I getting that special present? The day is nearly over. She didn't want to sound needy, but Belle simply smiled. Yes, but the night is still young. I will give it to you once we get back to your room. Belle, don't you raise my hopes for nothing. The Renard, however, only smirked. The curiosity and expectations grew, as did her heart. He wouldn't, would he? Astrea and the familiar were just about finishing their dinner when the two entered. They waved at them, but Belle looked unusually impatient as he dragged Elise away. Before the greetings were even over, the girls all exchanged curious looks but shrugged, waving it off as lovebird stuff. Belle. The Renard didn't answer, however, and soon they found themselves standing before her room. Belle pulled her inside before locking the door and walking to the window. The moon was high up in the sky, and as Belle turned around, her eyes blinked before they widened in awe at the beauty of the scene. Belle stood with his 9 tails released. The full moon stood behind him perfectly, highlighting him. His fur grew longer and glowed under the moonlight. Belle's eyes shone as they focused on her. His wild and ethereal form completely enraptured her. Elise, the special present for you is mere. Back then when you said you wanted to go all the way, I stopped you because I said I wanted it to be special. Today I experienced many new things with you, so many joys and wonders that I couldn't have imagined. Today I'm the happiest I have ever been. All thanks to you. It's also why I told you the truth about the Zeus. Familiar, because I trust you and I don't want there to be secrets between us. I want to lay everything bare for you to see. And tonight I offer you the last thing I have to give to you. Elise felt her heart thunder under his confession. Elise, I want you. I want to become one with you. Will you? I love you too, Elise. The blade born from love night before. Hearing the shout of a familiar voice screaming out, Ryu rushed towards the source of the sound. Just as she expected, the voice belonged to her beloved captain. What could possibly be the reason she screamed? Belle was with her as well, right? No, there is no time. She found the door locked, so with her level 5 strength she swiftly broke the door open and entered the room. What she saw as she entered the room was most certainly not what she was expecting to view. Belle laid down on the bed, Elise on top of him, both under the sheets. Her eyes widened in horror as she noticed the two were naked. Her shock grew as she realized what was happening. Elise wasn't screaming, she was moaning as she, with hands on Belle's chest, was moving up and down, grinding her butt against Belle. The sound of skin slapping and squelching rapidly turning Ryu's face red. They're making love. How elude. In their intense and passionate love-making session, the two hadn't noticed the elf staring at them. With unrestrained desire they moaned, groped and kissed. Luckily the sheets covered their joined hips, otherwise she would have witnessed how wet and leaking with the Renard's seed Elise's flower was. That and the sight of Belle's sword would have knocked her out instantly. Without spending another second, the elven girl ran off with hands covering the massive blush on her face. Kaguya and Lyra, who had also heard the shout, had made their way to Elise's room only to see Ryu rushing out. When they peeked into the room, they immediately understood why. With a blush, the two witnessed the moment the blanket fell off and the two went crazy. Belle grabbed Elise, spun her around and laid her down below him before rapidly thrusting into her. The two sneaky girls watched in awe as Elise moaned while a thick meaty rod plunged into her, making a white viscous liquid leak out of the red-haired girl. I say we give them some privacy, Lyra. Why yes, let's do that. They closed the door, though the lock was now broken, and quietly made their way back to their respective rooms while thinking back at what they saw. You know, I always joked about having red-haired Renards running around the manor, but that I was not expecting. Yeah, I guess your wish to see little cubs will come true soon, Lyra. Indeed. Lyra and Kaguya left the area and returned to their beds. Sleeping, however, proved to be a harder challenge than facing the Goliath. The bumping and the moaning kept the two along, several others awake through the night. Present. Belle and Elise were roused from their sleep around 7, only to wake up horny. And starting another passionate session which continued into the shower while washing themselves. As they got out of the bathroom, they finally calmed down enough for Belle to stop thrusting into Elise and for Elise to stop humping Belle. Putting a fresh set of clothes on, the two arrived in the Manor's dining room just in time as Estrella was serving breakfast to the others. Hey, what's the matter, Elise? Belle. The two adventurers turned to the goddess and with a bright smile they shook their head. They are visibly glowing. Just what happened? Everyone noticed how Belle and Elise in particular were acting differently and, aside three of the girls in the room, one being Estrella, they all knew very well why. Iska as an Amazonas had an instinct telling her why they acted so joyous, while Nese as a werewolf could smell it. Not only was Belle's scent and pheromones all over Elise, but with the amount of times the two had went at it, even after a shower, she could still smell Belle's musky seed on. Captain. The other girls, however, had either witnessed it or heard them, or both. They would die of embarrassment if anyone knew, but more than two had a sleepless night, busy pleasuring themselves to the song of their moaning captain. Belle immediately noticed the blush on many of the girls' faces, who would avoid his gaze, as well as the smirks from Kagaya and Lyra. However, he only truly understood the reason when he noticed that Ryu was acting the same way she had when she walked in on him and Elise making out. Didn't he tell me she saw us? I even locked the door. That's when it came to his mind. He hadn't unlocked the door when he needed to leave the room. But if he had locked it when he entered yet did not unlock it to exit, did that mean she had walked in on them in the middle of them having sex? Now he understood the looks he got from the others, and his own face flushed red, though it wasn't enough to wipe the glow he had. What's the matter, girls? Lyra, however, simply chuckled. Don't mind them, I'll explain to you later, Estrella-sama. The familiar, currently relieved from the duty of patrolling Orario, stood in the backyard. They wore their adventurer clothes and equipped their weapons and armor. Kagaya stood before Belle while Elise aimed her sword at Ryu, who wouldn't stop blushing. Estrella raised her hand before giving the signal to start. Almost instantly Ryu was knocked down to her, but as Elise swept her legs. Looking up, Elise had her sword aimed at her neck, ending the spar. Belle and Kagaya had yet to start and only looked confusedly at the elven girl. Sorry. Deciding to sit out for a while, she watched as Belle fought with the entire Estrella. Familiar one after the other. Unfortunately, there were no lap pillows given as Belle held back from knocking them out, much to their displeasure. During that time, however, he won every match, even against Lyra, until he met Kagaya. The two danced around each other, swinging their blades with deadly precision. But after clashing 7 times, Belle was finally knocked to the ground by the Far Eastern woman. Not bad, Belle, your skill with the sword isn't any worse than mine. If not for the level difference, you would match me quite nicely. Speaking of, weren't you supposed to get a katana forged from Tsubaki? His ears perked up hearing that before his face slowly morphed to one of shock. I forgot. Everyone around began giggling, seeing his panicked look. Let's spar a little longer, then I'll take you to Tsubaki. How about that? Belle nodded and got up before aiming his blade at Kagaya. What followed was an hour of sparring, which ended with Belle being defeated 5 times, twice from Kagaya and 3 times from Elise, who had also joined midway. Well, let's wrap it up here, Belle. Wait. Before Elise could begin to drag Belle off to Babel, the Renard walked towards Ryu. Belle, how can I help you? Would you spar with me a little, Ryu? She took a moment to register before nodding. Yes, of course. She grabbed Alf Lamina and got into position. Estrella was unsure seeing her previous performance, but gave the signal and the two dashed forwards. As Elise and Kagaya expected, in just the first clash, Ryu was knocked to the ground by Belle's blade that smacked into her side. Ryu looked up when a shadow towered over her. Her gaze met Belle's as he, extending his hand to her with a gentle smile. She felt her heart thunder as their eyes locked, and her hand grabbed his. Pulling her up, Belle took his position opposite of her once more. Again, she nodded and dashed forwards. Instead of counterattacking, the Renard only, deflected and blocked the attacks. Ryu. Though her attacks didn't relent in the least, the elf showed signs that she was listening. You can't fight like that. I just can't focus when I get flustered. Belle sighed. Did you perhaps see us? Yesterday, I mean. She nodded. When we were having sex. Belle felt embarrassed saying that but repressed the incoming blush, being more worried about Ryu's current performance. The elf didn't stop her attacks, but they got slower and sluggish as her ears went red to the tips. Ryu, you can't let that stop you. I can't help it. Then will you fight like this when your familiars' lives are in danger? What if Everless attacked, mercilessly slaughtering the citizens, your sisters injured, and the city burning? Will you just stand there doing nothing if they embarrass you once? No, I didn't hear it. No, I'll fight. I'll beat anyone who dares trample over justice. Belle smiled. Then show me. Urga. Ryu's movements resumed being fluent and precise, each strike heavier and faster. Belle didn't let the sudden intensity surprise him and started fighting her seriously. From the side, Astrea and her executives happily watched as her spark was reignited. In the end, they went 4-10 rounds, which resulted in 7 victories for Belle and 3 for Ryu. The elf, however, wasn't surprised, nor was she depressed about it. My poor little lion was beat up. The red-haired captain dove on Ryu and nuzzled her face against the elf's cheek. Elise, stop. How can I? Belle smacked you around quite a lot, you know. It's fine, I will win against him in the tournament. Oh, will you now? Seeing the smirk on Belle, she felt herself smile. Just you wait. All right, time out. Elise suddenly interjected, turning everyone's attention to her. How about having a bet between you two? Whoever wins at the tournament can request anything they want from the other party. That obviously means that you can't lose to anyone else. Oh, also, you can request anything. Absolutely anything, no restrictions. For example, lion, let's say Belle wins and he requests you to strip down naked and run around the entire city. You'd have to do that. What? Both Belle and Ryu short-circuited hearing Elise speak. The Renard immediately turned to Ryu and waved his hands, hiding his face behind his tail. I would never do that to you, Ryu. I wouldn't want anyone to see you like that. The blushing elf turned to Belle and saw his desperate eyes before relaxing and allowing herself to giggle. Though he whispered the last part, she had heard it clearly and it moved something in her heart. Hee, I know you wouldn't, Belle. Thank you. Without a shred of hesitation, she placed her bare hand on Belle's head and began stroking his soft hair. But she wasn't the only who heard that. Hiya. How cute, my little Belle is already getting possessive of lion. Elise jumped in joy while Belle's face flushed again hearing her. Mumumu, Elise, you meanie. Hee. Sorry, Belle, you're just too adorable. Except when you're in bed, then you're a wild beast. Kyun. Elise, how shameless. Belle went back to his room to pick up some of the higher-level drops as well as a unique item, of which he had no idea of what it was, and regrouped with Astrea, Elise, Ryu, and Kagaya. The others had decided to stay home and take care of the preparations for the tournament. On their way to Babel, Belle had requested to stop by the Takemikazuchi familiar home to briefly inform him of the meeting with Amaterasu. The war god was surprised to hear that, as much as he was happy to oblige. Jotting down the details of the meeting, he thanked Belle before he resumed his trip to Babel. On their way to the shops, Astrea noticed the chipper Elise and was reminded to ask Lyra about her captain's glowing form. When Lyra leaned in and whispered into her ear, the goddess quickly turned red. Though she refused to believe her captain went wild like that, the Paolum told her that she had saw them. As she detected no lie, her blush intensified, clamming up as she imagined the scene in her innocent head. Oh heavens, my little captain is already a grown-up woman. With a skip to her steps and oblivious of her deity's mental crisis, Elise led them to the elevator that took them to one of the higher floors of the Hephaestus familiars shops. Following the red head, they entered a fancy-looking store which was being managed by a rough-looking dwarf, the Scarlet Harnell. Welcome to our shop. Despite being a prestigious shop, first-class adventurers were rare. Hey, is Tsubaki here? And no, Tsubaki like Hephaestus-sama rarely comes to Babel. Belle tilted his head confused at the answer. But last time she showed me her workshop and it was here in Babel. That would be because she has multiple workshops, though she does have one. Here indeed. Her main workshop is located in the familiar home, Etna Volcano. That is where she normally works and does most of her high-quality equipment. That's a bummer. Oh well, guess we're going to the Hephaestus Familiar's home. Just like that, Elise's cheery attitude was back. She waved goodbye to the dwarf and left. The others thanked the dwarf as well before following the high-spirited girl. Come on, Belle, don't you want to get your new sword made? Belle looked at Elise as she kept her upbeat skip and nodded. With a smile, Elise grabbed his hand and increased her pace. Behind them, Kagaya picked up their goddess and, with Ryu and Lyra in tow, they dashed after the couple before they could lose sight of them. Then let's go. Geez, Elise, slow down. The group had landed right in front of the gates, startling the guards. Behind Elise, Kagaya complained to her captain as she carried the brown-haired goddess. The commotion, however, had reached the ears of those inside, and Hephaestus herself came out to meet them. Astrea, am I in trouble for something? Now, don't just link me straight to trouble. The two cracked a smile. Sorry, but it's unusual to see you here of all places. Well, today I was just following Elise and Belle around. Since they were looking for Tsubaki, I thought they would be a good chance to meet you. Business? No, just to chat to a friend. Even I need a break to relax, you know. Of course. Come on, I'll take you to Tsubaki. On their way to the captain of the Hephaestus Familiar, the group ran into Welf, who was surprised to see Belle, Hephaestus, and the Astrea Familiar. Thanking him again for saving him, he accompanied the group to visit his least favorite person. Hey Tsubaki, you have guests. Welfie. You wish. The half-dwarf turned and her smile visibly brightened. Ah, Belle, if it isn't my favorite Renard. Finally here to give me some good drops. Yep, hee. Sorry about the time, I honestly forgot. Don't mind it, show me what you got and I'll get you a nice weapon. How long do you think it will take you? Fear not, little fox, I'll get it for you before the tournament. Hey, that means it needs to be ready in 2.5 days at the very best. Is that okay? She took a risk and rubbed his head without touching his ears. You're talking to the captain of the Hephaestus Familiar, one of the best smiths you'll find in the whole of Gakkai. Though the armor will have to wait until later, I can definitely complete the sword. That brought a smile to Belle, as it was enough to convince him of her skill. All right, in that case I brought some items I got. Skull sheep's robe, barbarian fur, obsidian, soldier's body stone, as well as the sharp fangs from worm wells. And actually I have something else I found in the dungeon, though I've never seen it before, nor could I find any records of it in the guild. That piqued the curiosity of the members in the room, particularly the 3 smiths. In the room, Belle went through his pouch and produced a crystal ball half the size of a human chest. Inside the transparent sphere was a small and dim golden flame that kept on meekly burning. Whoa, what is this? Tsubaki gently took hold of the crystal ball as she and Hephaestus looked at it with glowing eyes. Behind them, Welf watched in admiration, nearly drooling at the high-class item. He felt so jealous of Tsubaki, since she always got to play and experiment with the special items he couldn't even dream of. He'd die to get the chance to tinker with the crystal ball. I'll see what I can do with it. Now that I think about it, Tsubaki, aren't you level 5? Hee, I sure am, Belle. Why aren't you joining the tournament? Oh, it sure would be fun, but I can't say I'm up for it this time around. I'll pass, though I might join next time. But if you wish to help me, then perhaps you can help relieve me of all this stress and tension with a nice sparring session. What do you say? Belle smiled. Of course. The high smith grabbed one of her swords and started walking down the hallway. Then follow me to the courtyard. Tsubaki led them to the back of the mansion, where a large green field had been extended. The area was filled with various different smiths testing out their own creations. Their attention, however, soon turned to their captain, who rarely came out of her forge, and was now accompanying the Astrea Familiar along with Hephaestus. This should do. Tsubaki suddenly undid her jacket and took it off, leaving her in only her red hakama and a sarasha that bound her massive breasts. The moment she did, you could hear the cheers and wolf whistling from some of the audience, though the girls in the area looked disgusted at Those who did, Tsubaki didn't seem to mind as her attention was solely focused on Bell, who did not blush nor let himself get distracted. Instead, he got his sword and took a regular stance. Tsubaki followed suit, unsheathing her blade and aiming it at Bell. Everyone waited with bated breaths as the two analyzed each other before suddenly dashing forwards and starting the battle. The two clashed and locked their blades together. Both struggled, but no one got the advantage. Surprising. Tsubaki, you just leveled up, but you can already handle me, heh? Not quite. The two jumped back before sprinting into action once again. The two ferociously attacked at each other with strikes that would have cleaved trees and boulders apart. Dodge, deflect, and block. The two perfectly matched and countered each other. Bell had to admit that, amongst the level 5s he had fought so far, she was the most skilled, even more than Ryu. Tsubaki is incredible. Ryu was amazed how dexterous the high smith was, and so were the others. The lower-ranked smiths understood why she was the captain, while the Astraea familiar understood how Hephaestus' children had earned the title of warrior smiths. It's just natural, little lion. She is the high smith Tsubaki Colbrand. She forges every blade as if it was her child. She lives by the sword and knows her way with it better than most adventurers ever will. Every weapon she makes she tests with swings and fights. If she was a level 6, then she'd probably be close to matching me with Agaris, Alvacinth, and Otter using skill alone. Her mastery with all kinds of different weapons got her the nickname of Weapon Master. If she fought seriously, then with skill alone she'd probably be able to give Kagaya a difficult time even with the level difference. The Far Eastern woman had no shame in nodding and admitting that, which surprised the young elf. Huh. Tsubaki dodged a slash from Bell but forgot one crucial detail. Bell had a tail. The fluffy limb slammed full strength into her stomach, sending her flying back, skidding to a stop. She grunted and patted the impact area. Phew, I had completely forgotten about your tail. Ha ha, you're incredible, Tsubaki. I didn't think you'd be this strong. She smiled and happily accepted the praise. Thanks, little fox, but don't start getting tired on me. I won't. Bell switched his stance from the regular long point guard to a tail guard as he pointed the sword backwards. The high smith smirked and got ready. Bell dashed forwards, while Tsubaki prepared to receive the attack, but just before the Renard arrived in her strike range, he suddenly switched to a roof guard and swung down. Caught unprepared, she barely blocked the attack. That, on the other hand, was exactly what Bell was aiming for, and using his momentum he allowed himself to be carried forwards, landing a knee into her solar plexus. Tsubaki was sent shooting back and landed on her back. Before she could get up, Bell had his blade pointed at her neck. The tanned girl blinked, then smirked before eventually bursting into a laugh. Oh man, you got me good, Bell. Ha ha. It only worked because I got you by surprise. Surprise or not, in a real fight I'd be the dead one. Bell then extended his hand, which she gladly took, and was readily pulled up. All right, as a reward I'll give you a discount on the final price of the weapon. How about it? Thank you, Tsubaki. No worries. From the side, Welf had to admit that Tsubaki truly was in a league of her own. Not only when it came to smithing but fighting as well. The way she blocked all those attacks was something the red-haired smith wouldn't even imagine of doing. Damn. Tsubaki wrapped her arm around his neck as she walked back to Hephaestus. Except this time, she didn't get tossed aside. She reminded Bell a little of Elise with how upbeat and lively she was. All right, Bell, while you prepare for the tournament I will work on your weapon. I'll also make you a pair of knives out of the fangs. Just leave this to me. I promise I will make it worth your efforts. Though it may be a little pricey, my services aren't cheap. Thank you, Tsubaki, and don't worry, I'll pay you whatever amount is needed. As she focused on Bell, she noticed that he was a rather handsome yet adorable-looking guy. Her smirk suddenly grew naughty at the thought. Tsubaki, unlike what her appearance and mannerism suggested, was completely pure and innocent. She had never found the love she desired, but perhaps she could let herself a little loose around him. Rather, she wanted someone she could rely on intimately. Hey, Bell. HM. She whispered with a soft and husky voice in his ear so that the others couldn't hear. I can lower the price a bit if you do me a favor. Yup, a favor. Bell felt a tingle going down his back as her breath tickled his ear and his eyes turned to her. What kind of favor? She smirked and licked her lips at thought. Tilde, I wonder. Meet me tomorrow, here at the manor, in my forge. Elise and the others prepared to leave the manor to return to the much-needed training for Bell and Ryu when Tsubaki pulled her aside. The redhead looked at Tsubaki confusedly as she was looking around to make sure there was no one listening in. Though Tsubaki did promise Bell to lower the price for a favor, she didn't want to make Bell uncomfortable, nor did she want to make Elise think he was cheating on her. So, she approached her fellow captain to discuss what she could do with Bell. Hey Elise. Yes. I know you and Bell are a thing, but I heard you say he was also in a relationship with Kagaya. Oh, that was a lie. To shoo off an annoying noble. Oh. Elise saw the downtrodden look and smirked. But I said what I said because I don't mind being part of a harem. If Bell went after other women, I'd be happy as long as he loves me. And I wanted to get Kagaya into it. It just happened that fate showed me a golden opportunity to further my plans. The shine in her red eyes returned almost immediately. Could it be you wanted Tsubaki? Well, I guess I may be interested. Would that be okay? Elise began giggling. Of course it is, Zoo. You helped me a lot while I was a rookie adventurer, so this is the least I could do for you. How far can I go with him? You can go ahead and even get pregnant with his child if you want to, but only if Bell himself is okay with it. I'm surprised, Elise. I didn't take you for someone who would share her boyfriend. He. Well, Bell is a handsome and kind man. It would be no surprise if he unknowingly seduced girls left and right. I guess after I experienced such happiness, I know how nice it feels, and it doesn't feel right to deny other girls of his love. That is why I don't intend to be selfish and keep him all to myself. As a matter of fact, I want to share it with those I can trust, like you, Kagaya and Ryu. And for Bell's sake as well, I intend to expand this little harem. Well, and for my sake as well. I don't think I can handle all his love alone, honestly. If you get what I mean. Haha. All right, thanks, Elise. Bell spent the rest of the day sparring with the Astraea Familia and slaying monsters in the dungeon to increase his fauna. With the tournament coming, he spared no effort in getting stronger. Most of the people who he'd seen at the meeting exuded a pressure that suggested they were battle-hardened warriors. He wouldn't risk facing them unprepared. He also reminded himself to visit Tsubaki tomorrow and meet with Amaterasu the day after. That before the tournament started. That would leave him the rest of the time to train and prepare himself for the tournament. Honestly, he was pretty giddy. He always admired knights, and now he had the chance to fight true knights. Little did he know that he was in for a far more exciting meeting with Tsubaki. Much more than he would have expected. With growing excitement for the tournament, Bell went to sleep. Or so he would have done if he hadn't been in bed with Elise. Having had their first time together just the night before and being new to all these new experiences, the two rapidly started making out each moment that passed, their passion escalating. Before they knew it, the two were back to exchanging their love for each other, and the ladies in the manor were once again kept awake. Thus came the decision to install soundproof devices in Elise's room starting tomorrow. Bell presented himself in front of the gates of the Hephaestus Familia's home. The guards, recognizing the Renard and having been notified by Tsubaki, opened the gates, letting him in. He followed the path he had took the day before and found himself in front of Tsubaki's forge. Bell wondered if Tsubaki was even in the forge, considering how early it was. His question was answered soon enough, as just as he was about to knock, the door opened up. Tsubaki peeked out with her usual smile, and as expected of a high smith and the short time period she had to make his weapon, Tsubaki was already well at work. Ah, there you are, Bell. Come on in. Bell followed her inside and admired her workspace. Just as he imagined a smithy to be, it had a forge, an anvil, and many different tools to work the metal. Ores and drops were spread on the table, and different pieces of equipment Tsubaki had made were beautifully displayed on the wall. Whoa, they look amazing, Tsubaki. Thanks, Bell. Now, if you don't mind, think you can do me a favor. Is it what you were talking about yesterday? Yes, I want you to help me out for today. Oh sure, I can do that. For now I just want you to give me a massage. Working metal is pretty tiring. After all. Right. Belle sat down on the couch expecting Tsubaki to join him at his side only to yelp, as she took her place on his lap. Your laps are as comfortable as I expected. Do you mind, Belle? And no. With delicate hands he grasped her shoulders and began gently massaging them. She blissfully exhaled as Belle helped her relax her body. His fingers lightly sunk into her soft yet firm flesh which Tsubaki enjoyed. What she liked the most, however, wasn't the pressure but the warmth of the gentle touch. For minutes she engaged in small talk with Belle whilst he palpated her shoulders. Seeing him get more comfortable with her, the high smith smiled. It was time for the next step. She got up and signaled him to follow. He accompanied her to the forge inside, which was the obsidian soldier drop he had given her, and it was being used as the core of the blade. She grabbed the glowing piece of metal and placed it on the anvil before motioning for him to come forwards. Now, Belle, how about I teach you a little on blade smithing? Belle's tail wagged excitedly as he approached her. Grab the hammer there. He picked it up as she stood behind him. Belle felt himself blush as Tsubaki handed him the tongs that held the hot metal before she embraced him from behind, her curvaceous body close against his back but not quite pushing into him, while her hands found his. Now relax, I will just be guiding you. Using her hands, she guided the trajectory of the hammer and struck the hot iron. For a regular master smith, making an average steel sword could have taken a day or 2 weeks or more if being meticulous about it. However, that was mostly due to the hard metal being difficult to shape. That is where a blessing showed its miracles. With more strength, speed, and precision than a normal human could ever achieve, a Falna and the blacksmith developmental ability allowed Tsubaki to do in a day what others would take a week or more to make. With Tsubaki at the helm, in 4 hours the two together made the same progress a regular bladesmith would have made in 2 weeks. Forging a katana was way more arduous of a task than a normal blade. During those 4 hours, however, Tsubaki had got more daring. She was now firmly pressed up against him. She whispered with a sultry voice in his ear, and after making him open up to her, she had taken to nibbling the tip of one of his ears whenever he made a mistake. Initially, Tsubaki wondered if she took it too far, but it seemed Belle was someone who liked to commit to a task, so she took advantage of that. She'd beg for his forgiveness later. Without realizing it, and much to the smith's delight, Belle had wrapped his tail tightly around her waist, showing he wasn't completely against it either, which gave her sign to make a few more intimate advances. Her hands trailed down from his own and enveloped around his chest. Belle Tilda. She blew down his neck, sending a shiver down his back. Wait. Tsubaki, this eye isn't he right? The smith suddenly found herself wanting to know how much Belle was willing to let slide, and tested his loyalty to Elise, but just as she placed a kiss on his neck, the Renard spun around. He simply didn't realize that by spinning around, with a tail around her waist, he would bring her closer to him, her chest squishing against his, making their position more compromising than before. If Elise doesn't know, wouldn't it be fine? His hands went to her shoulders to stop her from getting closer. No. She saw how desperate he looked and felt her heart ache. Gods, what am I doing? She shook her head and immediately apologized. I'm really sorry, Belle. I should have told you that I got permission from Elise to do this. All the resistance she felt on her shoulders vanished. Actually, I spoke to her about this, and she said she didn't mind. I was just looking to see how much you were willing to do behind her back. I am sorry, that was terrible of me. Oh, phew, it's fine, Tsubaki. No, that was my fault and it was unnecessary. I'm sorry. I got excited because, you see, Belle, gosh, this is embarrassing to admit to you, but I've never been in a relationship. Heck, I don't think I've ever held hands with a boy aside from the usual handshakes. That was something Belle certainly didn't expect from Tsubaki, out of all people. I guess I never really hung out with anyone. The only friend I've gone out with is Gareth. But that old man is just a good old drinking buddy. We go out to drink and that's it. Are you interested in me? Well, when I heard about Elise letting you be in a harem, I suppose I got interested, cause you look cute and kind. and brave and heroic. You are so many things that I can't really list them all. We haven't talked that much. I've seen and heard much about you from others. I mean, you look surprised, but you're the guy that swept Elise off her feet. You shouldn't be shocked to see other women showing interest in you, Belle. Sorry. No, that was my bad, Belle. I'll stop. In that moment, Belle could see the loneliness and sadness in her. It made his heart twist to see the upbeat girl so out of character. His grandpa always promoted harems, and Elise was giving her permission. Surely no one would fault him for giving in, right? Tsubaki. The tan girl looked as a hand held her waist while another one cupped her cheek. Without realizing it, she had taken a couple of steps back until her legs hit the couch. Slowly, Belle pushed her down onto the couch while his frame loomed over her. Tsubaki, with a thundering heart, looked at him in anticipation. Is this the moment? She closed her eyes and puckered her lips a little. Without denying her any longer, Belle leaned down and placed his lips on hers. The smith immediately felt a smile on her face, as delight filled her body and mind. It was a simple and chaste kiss, but which had her melting in his arms like steel in a furnace. Belle broke the kiss which Tsubaki was enjoying and caused her to briefly chase, leaning up to him. Belle Tilda. The two didn't notice in that moment, too entranced by each other, how the sphere reacted to them. Its dim golden flame was revitalized, bursting into a powerful crimson fire. Wisps of pink flew around, matching the passion the two were showing. Is this what you were looking for? Seeing Belle's smile made her heart throb. Before nodding, can you indulge me a little more? Belle's smile widened and he leaned down again, letting the woman deprived of carnal desires be enveloped with the love she always waited for. The sword was left cooling down, but Tsubaki didn't care. She had plenty of material and she didn't mind wasting it. She wouldn't trade this moment for anything in this world. Come again tomorrow to get your sword. After having lunch, Belle had took it upon himself to please Tsubaki with kisses, hugs and cuddles for hours to come. Despite that, the two had made much progress with the sword, but he decided to leave the harder parts to Tsubaki. She was the expert after all. Seeing as it was already late in the afternoon, Belle bid Tsubaki goodbye with a searing kiss which reminded her how much he loved her before leaving. What the hell? Tsubaki was smiling, her eyes fixed on the Renard, when she heard someone speaking. She turned to her left and saw that Welf was standing there. Considering the goofy look on his face, Tsubaki guessed he had seen her and Belle kissing. She reciprocated his confusion by staring back with an arched eyebrow. What? Am I not allowed to fall in love? You love him? Well, I'm not really sure, but I definitely like him a lot. I would be happy if it evolved into love. The hell you looking at me like that for? You in love? Also, isn't there like a 24 or something difference in years? When Welf asked that question, Tsubaki felt her eye twitching. She seldom minded what others said, but that hit home. For a moment there was silence, then Welf paled as he noticed the dark aura that surrounded the captain of the Hephaestus Familia, her knuckles cracking. That was when he noticed that he had went too far and commented on something he shouldn't have. I don't remember you landing a girl, so what right do you have to criticize my love life? So, Welfie, tell me, do you want me to beat the daylights out of you? No. Sorry, that was insensitive of me. I'll get going. She huffed as he left with a guilty look, but soon her smile returned as memories of Belle's warmth resurfaced in her mind. Maybe I do love you after all, Belle. Where were you? Belle sat on a couch as Estrella loomed over him, trapping him with her arms. Similar to his situation with Tsubaki, except the roles were reversed and there was no romantic ambience. Rather, Estrella was smiling, but her eyes and expression suggested anything but a smile. With Tsubaki. This whole time? Yes. Did you do anything inappropriate? Belle didn't know how to answer that, but considering the conditions under which it happened, he didn't believe them to be inappropriate, so he shook her head. Estrella didn't detect any lie, but did not look convinced either. Belle, is there something you're not telling me? No. There she detected a lie and her face began frowning. Belle, are you cheating on Elise? Of course not. Did you kiss Tsubaki? Belle blushed but nodded. What? How is that not cheating? Because I am fine with it. Belle thanked whatever god was watching over him as Elise entered the room and saved him. Are you really fine with it? Yep. Remember he kissed Lion as well. Well, I don't mind. Just like I don't mind. If it's Tsubaki. Astrea-sama, I already told you that I don't mind Belle having a harem. As long as he loves me. Besides, I didn't see you complaining when I invited Kaguya and Lion into our relationship. I guess. But shouldn't he at least tell you? Oh, about that, Tsubaki came to me to ask if I was fine with her getting frisky with Belle and I said it was okay. She was so caring about my relationship with Belle, honestly it was cute. And she even asked me how far she could go with Belle. As long as Belle is fine with it, she can do anything she wants. The goddess sighed, though she wasn't fully convinced, but once again Elise saw an opportunity in it. Kamisama, could it be that you're jealous? She burst into a blush and furiously shook her head in denial. What are you saying, Elise? I am not jealous. Are you sure? Someone else is robbing your time with Belle. Imagine all those cute little godly Renards running around you, calling you mama. Elise, stop. That is not the case. And you know that cannot happen. Elise with her smirk was now sure that Astrea did feel some kind of attraction towards Belle, which was perfect. All she had to do was bide her time and she would join the harem in no time, but for the time being she'd let it slide. She'd come back to her later, after she was done getting Kaguya and Tsubaki fully in the mix. That meant until Belle bedded the two girls. If you're sure, come on Belle, let's go. I want all the details. After being saved from the goddess of justice, Belle was dragged off by Elise. Arriving in the courtyard, Elise asked what happened and he briefly recounted how the situation escalated, and he ended up kissing the high smith. Elise squeaked in glee at the addition of the second member to the harem. All right, then Kaguya is next. Elise, are you sure? Seeing his worried look, she smiled. Of course I am. I know I was jealous with Shinano, but I want to share this with other girls I can trust. Besides, after you showed me your love and nearly got me pregnant, if not for the TM it gave me, I no longer have any doubts. As long as you show me more of that love, I don't mind adding a dozen more partners to your harem. Just make sure to moderate how many children you intend to have. Belle blushed brightly and only responded by hugging her using his tail. Hee, you're so cute, Belle. Now, more training. We got to show you and little Lion off to the rest of the world. You'll kick everyone's ass and show how amazing you two. Despite the embarrassment, Belle nodded. There you two are. Knees waved at them, the other members all too busy watching Kaguya and Ryu fighting. Hey Knees, how is Lion holding up? Not bad, definitely better than before, but she's still getting toyed with by Kaguya. Well, that is not surprising. Just as Knees finished saying that, Kaguya struck the elf on the head, knocking her out. Oh, whoops. The others around, however, could tell from the smirk on Kaguya's face that it wasn't an accident at all. Ara, that was my bad. I must have hit her too hard. Belle, since you've been giving so many lap pillows to our familiar, how about you upkeep your role as caretaker and help our useless elf a little? With a sigh, Belle resigned himself to his fate and walked over to Ryu before crouching down. With gentle hands, he grabbed her head and shifted it onto his laps. Carefully, he began stroking her hair, which brought a smile to the unconscious blonde girl. Oh, look at Lion, she's smiling. Well, isn't that surprising? The girls of the Astrea familia all gathered around while Elise and Kaguya sat on each side of Belle, with Lyra leaning over Belle's head, all waiting for the elf to wake up. Luckily, it only took a few minutes for her to stir and her eyes to stir open. Awake at last, you useless elf. Kaguya, did you like being pampered by Belle that much? You were smiling like an idiot. Ryu blinked and took a moment to register what she said before realizing that the ground was weirdly tender and that Belle was looking down at her, his hand gently stroking. Elise. And the other girls all staring at her. That feels really go. Wait a minute. Ryu slowly turned redder as she noticed her head laid in his lap. The moment her face fully ripened, its red color matching a tomato, she shot up and away from Belle. I am sorry about that, Belle. Belle chuckled and shook his head. It's okay, Ryu. I don't mind. Now that you're up once again, you useless elf, be prepared to take a beating. I won't have you shame our familiar at the tournament. Belle proceeded to start sparring with the other members while Ryu was thoroughly smacked around by the level 6 vice-captain. Elise flinched and cringed at some of the hits. She knew Kagaya meant well, but sometimes she had to admit she wasn't sure if she was doing that for Ryu or simply her own personal desire to toy and shame the elf. Hour after hour, Belle swung his sword against whoever came up to spar against him. Ryu was badly bruised by the end of the training session, which ended up with Kagaya being scolded by the others. Even Lyra defended Ryu, saying the Far Eastern woman had gone too far with her little training. Luckily, their spars were interrupted by Estrella, as she called them, in for dinner. The familiar had fun as usual, chatting and bickering. Like always, Estrella was at the head of the table with her captain and vice-captain on each side. Belle sat next to Elise with Ryu on other side. Both Ryu and Estrella were caught staring at Belle or his tail more than once throughout the dinner, much to their embarrassment and to the fun of the others. It was after they finished dinner and Elise was taking her plate back to the kitchen that Kagaya stopped next to her. They silently washed their own plates until Kagaya picked the courage to ask a question that had been on her mind ever since the meeting. Say, Elise, back at the meeting when you said I was dating Belle and you talked about polygamy, were you serious? Interested? Perhaps. Am I correct to assume I'm one of your personally handpicked candidates for his harem? Yup. You'd be the third member. Sabaki is already in. Next will be Little Lion, then Estrella-sama. What? You want to hook him up with our goddess? Of course. Then I can. Go ahead. I'll leave him to you for the rest of today, though I'll take him back for the night. I feel you're still not ready to go that far. Even with her fan, she couldn't hide the wide smile that adorned her face and the blush that accompanied it. Thank you, Elise. No probs. What are you going to do while I borrow Belle? Probably go through the paperwork. Kagaya turned to her captain with an incredulous look. I know, but I guess I too need to be diligent about my work like Belle. The way he works hard to get stronger for the sake of his goal makes me want to be better, even if only to show off to him. He really does change us all for the best, doesn't he? You've become much more mature. He does, and I did. But I'm still the one and only, the beautiful Elise. That you are. Now hurry and go get Belle. Kagaya returned to the dining room and made her way to the Renard. Having spoken to Elise, she decided to hold nothing back from now. Belle Tilda. She cooed as her hands wrapped around his neck from behind. Kagaya. The girl swung around and gently landed on his lap. You see, I worked myself to the bone for that useless elf over there. What? Ryu looked flabbergasted, but Belle's attention was returned to Kagaya as her hand cupped his cheek and turned his face to her. I am tired and am in need of someone to help me relax. Belle saw this coming from a mile away, and glancing back he saw Elise giving him a thumbs up. With a chuckle, his hand grasped Kagaya's waist and brought her closer to him, so that he could embrace her with both his arms. The Far Eastern woman was surprised, but soon fell into the role as she wrapped her arms around his neck. Getting confident, aren't we, Belle? Well, after spending so much time with Elise, I guess her charisma is rubbing off on me, eh? Little. That it is. Then I guess there is no need for me to be subtle about it. Around them the girls all blushed as they watched Kagaya make advances on Belle. Obviously their first reaction was to look at Elise, but the girl was watching over them with an excited glint, as if she knew this was happening. Or perhaps she put Kagaya up to it. Well, I need attention and I want it now. Here. I guess we could move to the couch by the fireplace. All right. She yelped as Belle firmly grasped her back and thighs before lifting her up and carrying her off. She clung to him as he carried her off, liking the way she was being handled by Belle. The girls behind him were left shocked, particularly Estrella and Ryu. Elise, however, was happy and whistled her way back to her room, preparing to go through the paperwork she said she'd do. And soon Belle's harem will have 3 members. Belle sat down on the couch with Kagaya in his arms. He gently embraced her so as to not make her uncomfortable. If there was one thing he understood about the Estrella familiar, other than the fact that they fought for justice, was that none of the girls had any experience with men. Just as he expected, when he got closer to her, she put a hand on his chest to stop him. Wait, Belle dash. I know, I'll start slow and be as gentle as I can. She blinked before her smile sprouted. Thank you, Belle. Slowly his face drew closer to hers. Feeling the anticipation, she closed her eyes and waited for Belle to initiate the kiss. Soon after, she felt Belle's warm lips pressed against hers, tenderly massaging them, which drew mules out of Kaguya. She felt her heart get set on fire as Belle kept on showering her with love, but showing his caring nature as he neither pushed his tongue into her nor did he feel up her body with his hands. I can understand why Elise likes it so much now. This feeling is indeed wonderful, but she wanted more of this wonderful feeling. She grabbed one of his hands and placed it on her generously gifted chest. Getting the gist of she wanted, Belle began groping her, using his other hand to feel her thighs, always slowly and gently. With a moan, she egged Belle to keep giving her more, to which he answered by sticking his tongue into her mouth. Feeling it swirl inside her and playing with her own tongue, she melted in his arms. Belle Tilda. For many long minutes, Kaguya lost herself in the lovely feeling, only briefly taking the time to breath before begging Belle to continue. With raspy pants Kaguya laid on top of Belle, she kept making out with the Renard, his tail feeling up her butt and thigh much to her pleasure. Had enough yet, Kaguya? For tonight perhaps, yes. But I expect more tomorrow. You will get more. Good, then I'll see you tomorrow. Good night, Belle. With one last kiss, Belle left. Good night, Kaguya. It was the first time since he started dating Elise that he walked the streets alone. After the exciting moment with Kaguya, he had returned to his girlfriend's room. The two chatted for a while before having a quick round to show their love to each other, eventually going to sleep. The following morning, since he was going to meet Amaterasu and Takemikazuchi, Elise decided to stay behind to further work on her duties as a captain and let Belle take care of this himself. Equipping his armor and sword, he left the Stardust Garden. Finally alone again, Belle realized how lonely it actually was without Elise or Kaguya or any of his usual companions. Of course, just like Elise, he realized they can't always be together, but he was surprised how much he relied on her support and presence. With a shake of his head, he dropped the negative feeling, knowing he would spend much more time of his life with his girlfriend from now on. Whoa, Misty, your tail looks so big and fluffy. Belle was surprised from the comment, but his eyes soon found the person who spoke. Standing at the height of his waist, a small Chienthrope girl was staring up at him. For a moment, Belle thought he was looking at a Renard, but upon closer inspection he realized she was a Chienthrope. The little girl looked no older than 10, her long and straight hair was a cream color, while her eyes were a mix of orange and amber. Thank you. Judging by the way the girl suddenly blushed and hid her face behind her tiny hands, she hadn't intended to say that thought out loud. Her brilliant look turned shy, clearly embarrassed from being heard making such a comment. Belle himself wasn't exactly sure how to react to that and fell silent. Moving her fingers, the orange eyes peered through the cracks and stared up at him. Not wanting to stand there all day, he spoke up. Can I help you with something? Well. She reminded him a lot of Akari, which made him realize the possibility that she was simply lost. Could it be that you're lost? With a glint in her eyes, she nodded. Okay. Then, do you know where you're supposed to go? Yes, the market area. Belle thought about it and realized that it was on the way to the Hostess of Fertility, his current destination. Well, I'm going that way, so, do you want me to accompany you there? He could see how her tail began wagging excitedly. Is that okay? With a bright smile, he nodded, making the child jump in joy. By the way, I never got your name. Ah, I'm Fina. Fina. Just Fina. Yep, I'm an orphan. Belle felt a pang in his heart hearing that. He could relate to her after all, even if he did have his grandpa. He never met his parents. Without knowing it, he began patting her head, which she clearly enjoyed as she leaned into the touch. On the way, he learnt that the little Chienthrope was very friendly and talkative. Once you got to know her, he also noticed she had an outspoken personality. She was open and honest, but Sometimes her thoughts left her mouth without thinking or realizing it, which is what had happened when she first saw him. Fina. It was about 30 minutes later that the two arrived at the market area. As soon as they arrived, someone called her name. Who is that? Get away from Fina. The two saw a boy with light brown hair and eyes glaring at them. In his hand he held a stick, while charging towards them. Fina rushed forwards to stop him but couldn't do anything as he rushed past and swung the stick at the Renard. The stick hit Belle on the leg and bounced off, sending the boy down to his butt. Belle in the meantime simply stared, once again not knowing how to deal with the situation. He was attacked by a child with a stick. The boy in front of him could neither hurt him nor threaten him. Besides, if the shouting was anything to go by, he simply seemed to be protecting his friend from a ruffian, though that just him jumping to conclusions, being exchanged for a ruffian, however, did sting a little, as the Renard prided himself as a hero. Please forgive him. A woman suddenly rushed forwards, begging him to spare the child. Then again, Takumi Kazuchi and Estrella did mention that not all adventurers were honorable fellows, though that was partly because the majority of the people who looked to become an adventurer was out of lust, greed, or some other foul reason. Maria, stop. Fina ran in between Belle and the two strangers with open arms as if to protect Belle. Belle-san is a very kind adventurer who helped me get here after I got lost. He kept me company and made the journey fun and interesting. He's not a bad person. Hearing that, the two strangers relaxed and allowed Belle to clear the misunderstanding. So he explained how he was on the way to the hostess of fertility when he met a lost Fina. From there he told them how he accompanied her to the market area so that she could reunite with them. I see. I am truly sorry about this whole situation. It's fine, Maria-san. I don't mind. It's not like I was hurt anyways. Hearing that, however, hurt Rai's pride as a future adventurer. Oh, I need to go or I'll be late. Already. Sorry, Fina. There are places I need to be. All right. Will I see you again? Yes. If you want, you could go to the tournament. I'll be in it after all. This time it was Rai speaking. What? But the tournament is between level 5 warriors from across the world. Yes, I'm the Takumi Kazuchi familiar representative for the tournament. Then you're level 5. Yes, why? That is amazing. Hee. Well, if you do decide to come, I'll make sure to give you a good show. But for now I need to hurry. Bye, Fina. Fina waved at Belle as he jumped over the roof of a house to hurry over to the hostess of fertility. When he arrived, he saw that Takumi Kazuchi and his familiar were already there, sat at a table with Amaterasu. Next to the sun goddess, there were many faces he didn't recognize. As a matter of fact, the only person he knew from the large group was Shinano. About time boy. MIA was the first to greet him as he entered. Sorry, MIA. It's fine, you brought me more customers, so you're pardoned. Belle chuckled at her antique before joining them at the large table that was set in the corner for privacy. Seeing him, the Takumi Kazuchi familiar happily greeted him. Ah, there you are, Belle. I was about to send Mikoto to look for you. Apologies, Take and Amaterasu-sama. I met a lost child on the way here. The goddess giggled hearing that. A golden heart is always appreciated, Belle. Don't mind it and sit down. Seeing that the only empty seat was by Shinano, he plopped down next to the Renard, who happily smiled at him. Now, since this is more of a reunion for me and Take as well as my familiar with I thought you might have felt left out, so I brought Shinano, who would have likely felt like you, if it was just her. The two Renards exchanged looks and blushed lightly, as that was pretty true. Now, before you two get lost in your little word, I wanted Belle to meet my familiar, specifically my representative for the tournament, our most recent level 5. Kamadu, Tanjiro. Belle followed the goddess' hand and turned to meet the gaze of a young man with dark red eyes and hair. I'm Kamadu Tanjiro. It's a pleasure to meet you. He looked like a kind and compassionate person, his eyes holding a certain gentleness to them, though at the same time he looked like he was a determined and serious person, so serious in fact that it sometimes led to awkward or embarrassing situations. Not that Belle knew that at that time. The pleasure is mine. I look forward to seeing you in the tournament. Me too. Amaterasu then introduced some of the other members, where he learnt that 2 of them had reached level 7, 2 were level 6 and 11 members were at the peak of level 5, excluding Tanjiro and Shinano who had recently become level 5. Belle looked at Shinano, incredulous, as she had never mentioned her level before, which earned him a giggle from the blue-eyed Renard. However, that meant that her familiar wasn't inferior to those of Orario, as a matter of fact. With 2 level 7, 2 level 6 and 13 level 5s, they were already stronger than Freya Familia. Should they level up, they would easily surpass the Freya Familia. Upon marveling how they reached such a high level without the dungeon, the goddess enlightened Belle as to how her familia worked. No matter how talented and strong they were, the excelia they got outside of the dungeon often wasn't enough to grow or level up. That is why every 2 months a quarter of the members from her familia are picked and sent on an expedition that lasts 2 months. During those 2 months, they travel to Orario and explore the dungeon, whether it is to hone their skills, improve their fauna, or to level up. After 2 months end, they return and another quarter is picked and sent, allowing for a constant rotation that allows everyone in the familia to improve themselves. Everyone in my familia reached level 3 before having to take many trips to Orario in order to become stronger and reach higher levels. I see. However, there is a familia that is stronger than us, Freya and Loki familia combined. Hearing that shocked Belle to the core. There is. Yes, this familia used to be a close supporter of the Zeus and Hera familias, and all of its current executives were trained by those 2 monstrous familias. That is why they are so strong. Currently they have 3 level 7s, 15 level 6s, 5 level 5s, and several dozens level 4s and below. But, Takemikazuchi proceeded to explain from there. Belle, since you're from a small village, I don't suppose you're aware of what happened 2 years ago. The Renard confirmed his guess by shaking his head. You see, the Baphomet familia has many order of knights. The strongest of them is called the Integrity Knights Order. It's an order of knights that only consists of those who become executives of the familia either by reaching level 5 or showing they are worthy of the title. 2 years ago there was a terrible incident. Back then the Baphomet familia used to have 2 more level 7s and another 3 level 6s compared to now. However, one of the level 7s at that time, called Gabriel Vector, wasn't well liked due to his cruel and distorted nature. Apparently Evolus caught notice of this and convinced him to join them. After carrying out many atrocious acts for them for several months, the Baphomet familia eventually found out. Wanting to atone for their mistakes and take responsibility as he was a member of the Baphomet familia, they asked Orario to stay out of this so they could deal with it themselves. However, other like-minded people had joined that evil man's side. Those who had a more sinister view of humanity defected, and like that a civil war began. After a grueling battle, Baphomet familia killed Gabriel, who had fallen astray. Unfortunately, one of the 4 level 7s that was fighting against Vector was killed. If you exclude the people who had joined Vector, the order had 48 members. Of those 48, 25 died, including a level 7, a level 6 and a dozen level 5s. Though they have mentally recovered, their strength isn't anywhere near their glory days. Belle was deep in thought, processing everything he heard. For a long time he believed that, even without the Zeus and Hera familia, Orario had been the strongest city in the world. That, however, was proven wrong by 2 different familias. Not only that, but the tragic story had shown there was much more to the world outside than he had initially thought. A lot to take in, I presume. Turning his attention to Amaterasu, he nodded. Well, Shinano, why don't you take him out and have a walk to let him sort out his thoughts? Of course. Belle was getting up when something important came to his mind, something he was dying to know. How it had escaped his mind until now he did not know. Amaterasu-sama, do you know anything about my parents? The goddess knew that question was coming. Well, after I heard your name and saw you in person, I could tell straight away who your parents were. I do know about your parents, but I didn't know about you nor what happened to them. All I can tell you about is what kind of people they were and about their history. But I'm really sorry to tell you that I know nothing of what happened to You. As far as I'm aware, they suddenly vanished one day. I see. Everyone felt their heart crack as they watched the glint in his eyes dim and his smile fade. His ears and tail slowly dropped down, as did his eyes when his hopes were dashed. Bell didn't realize it at that time, but as sadness filled him, he let out a small, sorrowful, fox-like whine which struck everyone's heart like an arrow. I really am sorry, Bell. No, it's okay. Thank you, Amaterasu-sama. The sad smile was hard to digest for the goddess as he turned to leave the hostess of fertility. He needed a breath of fresh air and time to sort out not only his thoughts, but his feelings as well now. They knew he needed some time alone, but Shinano decided to accompany him even if all she got was silence. I'm sorry, Take. It's fine. He would have had to face it and hear about it at some point. It's probably better he heard it from you. I just hope he is okay. Shinano walked next to the dejected Bell with worry in her eyes. For minutes they kept following the main road until they reached Babel. She followed wherever he went. Whether or not he asked for it, as long as he doesn't say he wants to be left alone, she'd keep following. How about we sit? Seeing the empty benches that Shinano was pointing at, he nodded. The two slowly made their way over to the benches and sat down. As Bell remained silent, Shinano kept her eye on him, racking her brain to find a way to comfort him. After all, even if there was little that could be done other than wait, perhaps she could make the process faster if she could lift his spirit up. Question is, how do I go about that? Social skills weren't her strongest point. Sure, as a close follower of Amaterasu, she had done much work as an envoy, ambassador, taken part in meetings and interacting with the masses to work out a solution to their problems. However, it was all political, economical, and every problem was a physical one. Sure, she dealt with some emotional issues that were faced by the population on a national level, but they were straightforward. Like if there is a famine, then they'd provide emergency rations. If there was a drought, then they'd work to conserve water, adapt the climate around the soil by building greenhouses and other such problems. What Bell was facing right now was simpler yet more confusing and complicated. At the same time, there was no solution, and she had no experience with this kind of issue. No matter what she thought, she drew a blank. But seeing the normally smiling face frown made her heart twist painfully. Despite the fact that she's sitting right next to him with shoulders touching, she felt as close to him as she felt distant. Not knowing what to do, she let her heart take control. Without realizing it, her tail snuck closer to Bell's before their tips touched. Slowly she began meekly wrapping her tail around the tip of his, finally drawing him out of his trance. Despite her blush, her blue eyes never left the red ones. I thought it would help relax. Bell remained silent as he kept staring at her. How embarrassing. I made her worry. Not only that, but I am here doing nothing while she is trying to help me out. I'm really pathetic sometimes. Shinano could only wonder what he was thinking when suddenly she felt his tail wrap around hers as if returning an embrace. Their tails intertwined, gently yet almost desperately holding onto each other. His face turned away from hers to look at Babel, but a small smile appeared on his face, and the brightening of his eyes was not missed either. Thank you, Shinano. Anytime. Shinano smiled and happily sat there with Bell. The two exchanged no words, only the warmth of their tails. Enjoying his presence and touch, Shinano began humming to herself, letting the blissful moment continue. They had just about finished catching up. If it wasn't for the fact that they were in a pub, the two familiars would have liked to continue by sparring to test each other's skill. Luckily for Takemikazuchi and Amaterasu, Bell and Shinano returned just in time to get their attention. Bell, are you okay? I'm fine, thanks to Shinano. Amaterasu looked at Shinano, whose tail wagged happily, and smiled, content with the outcome. Well, the tournament is going to start soon after 1 o'clock. I say we have lunch and then head off to the Coliseum. Agreeing with her, the two familiars ordered a massive amount of food from MIA, who was very happy about that. While they were finishing up the many dishes they ordered, Bell noticed how MIA put the closed sign on the door despite it being pretty early. Isn't it early to close? I decided to let the girls all have a bit of rest, so we'll be going to the Coliseum. To watch. The tournament. I expect to see you clapping them opponents. Bell chuckled before nodding. Bell tilde. When he turned around to see who was calling out his name, he was met with a unbelievably soft pair of pillows smothering his face. Soon a smile crept onto his face knowing who it was. Hey Elise. How have you been without me? Lonely. She giggled before separating, only to briefly assault his lips much to the embarrassment of some of the other people around them. Close behind Elise came Estrella and the rest of her familia. Kagaya wasn't far behind Elise, and as soon as the red head ended the kiss, the black head girl took her own turn. Those who weren't aware of Elise's plan for Belle to have a harem were looking in disbelief. The only one who wasn't shocked was Shinano, who looked a little downcast but kept quiet. Estrella greeted her fellow gods before turning to Belle. All right, Belle, I believe it's time you got your sword from Tsubaki. Then we'll be ready to go. Right. That is correct, Estrella-sama. Taika Mikazuchi then got up, his familiar following suit. Then let us not waste any more time. Hephaestus saw the group of 3 familiars approach her house from a mile away. Telling Tsubaki, the captain grabbed the sword before heading down along her goddess. And Welf, who had once again asked to tag along. Hey Belle. She grinned like usual but was surprised when Belle went straight up to her and pecked her on the lips. Hephaestus looked absolutely floored, not knowing that her captain was in a relationship with Belle. Hephaestus-sama, I know it's late, but I'd like your blessing to date Tsubaki. While Belle bowed to her, she could see Tsubaki grasping at her heart as the action resonated deeply in her and warmed her soul. The subtle glance she got from Tsubaki was begging her to accept, told Hephaestus everything she needed to know. Ha, fine with me. But I have one condition. Anything. As her goddess and mother figure, I want you to make her happy. Both Belle and Tsubaki blinked before smiling brightly. Of course. All right then, I believe Tsubaki owes you a sword. When that topic came up, the high smith suddenly looked a little hesitant. What's the matter, Tsubaki? About the sword. I don't know why, but the moment I applied the weird drop item you gave me, no matter how much I tried, it took the shape of a great sword. Not a katana like you requested. I'm sorry. I hammered at it for hours, but it was as if the metal had a mind of its own. Despite what she said, making it sound as if it was a failure, when Tsubaki unveiled the wrapped-up blade, they were presented with a beautiful white and rubellite blade. Belle admired it in awe, as did Hephaestus. Tsubaki then handed the sword to her goddess so that she could analyze it. Hephaestus looked surprised when she took a close look at the blade. Do you know why it happened, Kamisama? By any chance, did you two work on the sword together? Why yes, but how did you know? Well, some old smiths, centuries ago, hypothesized that with the correct materials, love could be infused into the metal to make a legendary weapon. They thought love was a key component, a catalyst to the ultimate power, one that could even rival weapons made from the gods. Honestly, I never believed it until this. If I were to make a very wild guess, then I'd say that whatever that drop item Belle found did have a mind of its own. It witnessed your love and acted according to it. What I mean is that, just like a smith puts their passion into their blade, this weapon was forged and born out of Tsubaki's love for Belle. Hee, how romantic. Hearing that, the smith who made the weapon blushed bright red. To hear that she materialized her love for Belle embarrassed her to no end, as it did Belle. Hephaestus then let Belle take the sword. He was no expert smith, so he didn't see whatever her experienced eye had, but he definitely felt it. Her love and warmth exactly like the day before. He brought the blade close and his embarrassment vanished. In its stead a smile bloomed on his face. His attention turned to Tsubaki, who blushed even harder at the gentle smile on Belle's face. Thank you, Tsubaki. Tournament begins. Thank you, Tsubaki. Tsubaki felt her heart throb at the sight of his loving smile. All right, before I forget, I also have these for you. She handed him a pair of flisses made out of the worm whale's fangs. While he admired the pieces of work, she frowned slightly, though happy as a woman that her love was accepted and shaped into a blade that he would carry with him. As a smith, she was a little frustrated as she couldn't deliver what she promised. Belle, however, was quick to reassure her. I know what you're thinking, Tsubaki, but this is the best I could ask for. But it's not a katana like you asked. Won't it affect your performance? Hee, of course not. This weapon was forged out of your love for me and it took this shape. Then there is no better weapon. Your love is my greatest weapon and I wouldn't trade it for any other sword out there. While the two of them were having their little moment, Estrella turned her attention to the goddess of the forge. Hephaestus, are you coming to watch the tournament? Yes, I guess I'll join you three. I'll also bring Tsubaki and Welf here with us, if you don't mind, Estrella. Not at all. The four gods, accompanied by their children, began making their way to the Colosseum, owned by Ganesha Familia. Meanwhile, Tsubaki, who was left with only Belle, had turned as red as a tomato hearing that, but couldn't help the pride and joy she felt filling her. As Belle sheathed the large blade and strapped it over his back, he was grabbed by the collar and brought in for a kiss by Tsubaki, who couldn't hold her feelings in check anymore. Belle briefly returned it before taking her hand and catching up with the rest of the group. Before they noticed they weren't following. The Colosseum and the surrounding area was completely crowded with people. It was even worse than Monsterphilia. Luckily, with the recognition and status of one of the top familiars, people quickly got out of their way, which made it far easier to navigate the busy streets. The streets were filled with merchants, street vendors, and thousands upon thousands of tourists. The Colosseum was filled to the brim with people, and a dozen guild employees were doing their best amongst this chaos to be organized. When they arrived at the Colosseum, they were led to the VIP rooms, which were being provided to any of the familiars who participated, or high-rank familiars and people like the Loki and Freya familia, or the kings and emperors of other countries. Through the Estrella and Takemikazuchi familia MIA and her staff were also allowed into the room with her. Oh, there you are, Fei Fei. Enough with that nickname, Loki. Can't help it, and you know it. Oh, look, if it isn't the Renard boy. It's a pleasure meeting you, Loki-sama, though I do not believe we've met before. True, but you have met some of my members, like our local Mama, Riveria, and my captain, Finn, albeit briefly. It's a pleasure to meet you. Seeing her hand, Belle hesitated, which a few people noticed, particularly Elise, since she knew the reason. Luckily, before he could shake it, the red head was punched on the head. Stop being weird, Loki, and don't you present me as your local Mama. Hee, sorry. Mr. Katsuki, once again it is a pleasure meeting you. Oh, likewise. Belle was then greeted by the executives of the Loki familia, to the exception of a werewolf, who simply said his name and fell silent. Amongst them he took particular notice of Tiona for her bubbly personality and AIS as she kept on staring at his ears and tail. Occasionally his gaze would fall on Loki, a mixture of anger, hesitation, and disgust. Belle. He felt Elise's hand on his as she whispered in his ear. I know why you're angry, but I also know that you know this isn't the time. I know. Thank you, Elise. Always. The two snuggled together when someone else shouted his name. Belny. There he also met the Imperial family along with the other Renard girls he had met a couple of days ago. Amongst them was also a purple-haired Renard who stared at him suspiciously, and an excited Akari who immediately jumped into Belle's arms with a bright smile. Hey, Akara-chan. Belle began ruffling her hair, which she very much enjoyed as she leaned into Belle. There he also met her parents, a pair of regal-looking Renards, who seemed glad that Akari was enjoying her time here, and as he would later learn, the Emperor and Empress as her parents. Seeing her wide smile brought them great joy, for which they thanked Belle, not only for making her happy but also taking care of her despite her being a handful with her cheery attitude. The other girls then introduced themselves, learning they were named Akaji, Kaga, Amaji, and Musasha, who kept on observing with a suspicious look. He once again took notice as each member was just as beautiful as Amaterasu and just as gifted as Shinano, with voluptuous bodies and plentiful chests, though he quickly shook his head and rid himself of those impure thoughts. No, bad Belle. Bad Belle. Very bad Belle. Foo, like what you see. The girl named Akaji swung her hips and approached Belle, who backed away, with Akari still in his arms. Sorry, I didn't mean to stare. Well, for you I can make an exception, you look like such a cutie. Akaji, you can't do that. Shinano got in the way, making the confident Renard smirk. Ara, could it be you're jealous? We're sisters, surely you can share him a little. With us. Or, are you planning to hog him all to yourself? Ayakaji. Enough. He has a pair of girlfriends. The brown-haired Renard began giggling, enjoying teasing her far too much. If it isn't Shinano-sama and Akaji-sama, I hope you two have had a good day. The teasing smile and her giggle vanished. Her eye twitched as her expression turned blank the moment she heard the voice. Shinano also felt the frustration build in her who. Cursed the newly arrived Renard. This insufferable man. Luckily coming to her save was Akaji. Her look rapidly turned annoyed, looking at the noble with disdain. She walked past Belle and Shinano and got in between them and the male Renard. Murakami, I don't have the time for you. I believe your family along with the other nobles were sat down there at the front. It is not uncommon for us young people to sit amongst each other to deepen our bonds. Besides, it would be boring for you without company. Oh, don't worry about that. We intend to sit with Amaterasu and her familia. They recently introduced us to our newly acquainted allies, the Takamikazuchi and Astrea. Familia. Now if you don't have anything of important to say, I'd like to go back to flirting with the cutie over there. She pointed back at Belle, who blushed hearing her call like that. Murakami, however, wasn't deterred from conversing with her. I am sure I can provide you with an interesting enough time. Somehow I find that hard to believe. I don't understand why you are so keen with speaking to that guy over there. What do you mean? Akaji took a few steps back, and with a devious grin she leaned onto Belle, caressing his cheek with her hand. Look at how much of a cutie this guy is. His innocent nature. It just makes me want to have my way with him right now. Please refrain from being so uncouth. Why? You're the one coming on to me, yet you don't like how I act. Of course. You don't. All you look for in me is beauty and power. You're an insolent, disgusting man. Things became really heated really quick. Despite her position, Belle himself was surprised when Akaji went on the full offensive, not scared to slander the noble. I'm sorry about my sister. While Akaji argued, Amaji made her way to Belle as she looked at the two Renards fighting. She's always had a mischievous yet honest and open personality. I hope you can get used to. Kaga soon arrived as well, defending her fellow sister for her behavior. Amajine-san, look at that man. It is just natural Akaji acts like that. Belle, however, simply chuckled awkwardly. I was surprised by her words, but I think being honest is good. Besides, I am already acquainted with someone who is very much like her, so I'm already used to it. His eyes almost instantly homed in on the pink-haired Paolum, who wore a grin that was almost as sadistic as the one Akaji wore on her face this very moment. See, even Katsuka-san agrees. Akaji eventually sent the noble away, who grumbled and shot a glare at Belle, whose face was half hidden behind Akari's head. The Renard girls returned to chatting among themselves, with Akaji letting Belle be, for the moment being. Seeing as there were still 30 minutes before the competition started, Belle too returned by his familiar's side, with Elise, Kagaya, and Tsubaki sticking close to Belle and Akari, sitting on his laps, but was surprised when someone else approached him. Feeling their presence, he turned around and was met with a girl with long, platinum blonde hair flowing down to her waist and bright golden eyes. She was a little shorter than him and had extremely long white goat horns that were angled backwards along a pair of goat ears that bent downwards. Pleasure to meet you, Belle. I'm Baphomet. Hearing that, his eyes widened and he lightly bowed, handing Akari over to Elise. It's a pleasure to meet you, Kamisama. Elise and the other girls decided to let Belle deal with it and left them alone. Hee, you're so cute, you don't need to be so respectful. She began patting his head before he took a step back. He realized just now, but her outfit was a mix between a knight's armor and a dress. Seeing her face properly made him wonder if every goddess was a goddess of beauty, because she was no less beautiful than Freya or Astrea. How may I help you, Baphomet-sama? Just call me Meti. Hey, surely I couldn't. Come on, Belle, no need to be so distant with me. She suddenly leaned in close and whispered in his ear, her godly gifted chest being dangerously close to his face while her lips grazed his ear. Zeus told me about you. His eyes widened when he heard about that. Just before you two set out on different paths, he sent me a letter about you. I know both About your connection with Zeus and the fact that you have 9 tails. But don't worry, he told me because he trusted me with this secret, and I won't tell anyone. Unless you want me to. I just wanted you to be aware that I'm your ally. He didn't know whether or not he could trust her, but he knew he'd trust whatever his grandpa thought. If he believed her to be trustworthy, then so would he. If grandpa entrusted that secret to you, then so will I, Bafo dash. Her finger went to his lips to stop him. Remember. It's Meti or Metachan to you. Belle blushed by the sudden intimacy, but he conceded. All right, Metasama. Nope. Meti. Better. And like that she went back to patting his soft hair with a bright smile. Right, allow me to introduce you to some of my members. She led him to her familia, who were all sat down right next to Astrea familia. The VIP room was a single room that housed all VIP members after all. While Baphomet led him to her familia, he noticed all the other familiars and their participants, but they kept to themselves. When the Baphomet familia saw the goddess approach, they all got up and bowed to her. Milady. Our perfect timing. Belle, meet my level 7 captain, Quinella Axiom. She's level 7. It's a pleasure to meet you. Hee, the pleasure is mine, Belle. Quinella was an extremely beautiful woman with long silver-purple hair. Eyelashes and eyebrows were long and her eyes a mysterious color. He honestly couldn't tell if they were silver, purple or white. She wore a purple and white dress along light armor that protected her vitals. Then there's my level 7 vice captain, Bikuli Rulid. Nice to meet you, kid. Likewise. The mentioned man definitely stood out to Belle. He had a bulky and muscular build and was a little taller than him, standing at an astounding 2 meters, almost as tall as Otter. He had short iron gray hair and sky blue eyes. He had a rather thick neck and abnormally broad shoulders. Honestly, his forearms were more like a pair of logs. His posture and smile radiated confidence and a pressure he'd expect from a warrior. The knight wore a blue harari over his bare body, blue pants and simple armor. Greaves that protected his legs, vembraces, a shoulder guard on his left shoulder and a piece of armor that covered his whole main body front and back with a tasset on each side that covered the sides of his waist. Now unfortunately I don't have the time to present you the whole of my integrity. Knights. Just as she said that, the guild began announcing the start of the tournament. Soon, the participants would have to go down and pick their numbers, which would determine who would fight who. But I'd like to present you my 4 most prominent members, including my representative. Just on cue, 4 knights walked up to him. They all wore similar armor, each one a different color. This is Kirito Kazuto, the last of my level 7s. Hades, Cantaria and Alice Zuberg, who are level 6, and Yujiro Kazuto, our level 5 representative. Kirito and Yujiro had the same height, slightly shorter than him, and slim yet muscular bodies. While Kirito had short black hair and eyes, Yujiro had short blonde hair and bright blue eyes. While Kirito looked like he was a charismatic, unresponsible and open guy, Yujiro seemed more the serious yet shy and compliant kind of person. However, they both shared a kind heart and a resolute confidence. The 2 of them had identical fully plated armors, except Kirito's was black with golden highlights while Yujiro's was silver and dark blue. Belle watched with glowing eyes at their armor, as it looked like the classical ones he'd expect a knight in a story to wear. Kirito wielded 2 black and gold swords, while Yujiro had a light blue sword with a blue rose on the handle. His attention then turned to Hades and Alice, both of whom were just as beautiful as Quinella. Hades had crimson eyes and long silver hair, which she kept in a cone-shaped ponytail. The black ribbon she used to tie her hair had 2 tips pointing up, which made her look like a bunny, for which she was teased a bit. She wore the same armor as Kirito and Yujiro, with silver and black color patterns and a gray cape, wearing a sleeveless shirt under her armor. Hades' armpits and arms were left bare. Alice, on the other hand, had sparkling sky blue eyes and long golden hair. She kept a long bang flowing on each side of her head and a large thick braid down her back. She kept the braid tied with a blue bow and wore a white lace around her forehead. Like her fellow knights, she wore the full-plated armor, golden and blue in color, with the addition of a white skirt. Looking at the 2 girls, Hades smiling while Alice kept a serious look, In a way he got a strong Elise and Ryu vibe from them respectively. Alice kept a golden long sword by her side while Hades wielded a black katana. Belle couldn't help but be giddy at their sight. They were the images of the knights he idolized so much as a child. They must have noticed his tail wagging excitedly as they couldn't suppress the smiles that bloomed on their faces, including the normally stoic Alice. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Ibriakar. I will be today's announcer for this exciting tournament. Now before this event starts, a word from Royman Mardial. As the event was starting, Belle excused himself and returned by Takamikazuchi's side as Baphomet and her familiar took their seats. In the meantime, the fat elf walked onto the stage, pathetically struggling to get onto the stage before being helped by Ibri. Ahem. I would like to thank all participating members and their respective familiars for making this event possible. I hope that the citizens of Orario and its many visitors enjoy this show. The spectators clapped, though clearly unimpressed by Royman as he stepped off, allowing Ibri to take over once again. All right, people. You ready? Just like that, the tanned man brought back the ambience in an instant as the crowd was filled with enthusiasm and cheered. That's what I want to hear. Our guild employees will now head to the VIP room and have each participant pick a number. The numbers go from 1 to 16. After getting your number, we will have the odd numbers fight against the even numbers for the first round. But before that, allow me to present each participant. From Orario we have Ganesha, Astrea, Loki, Freya, and Takamikazuchi familiar. He then turned everyone's attention to the VIP room. From my familiar we have our dear captain the Ankusha, Shakti Vama. Everyone cheered and clapped for the blue-haired girl, popular for leading the police force of Orario. From the Astrea familiar we have the Gale, Ryu Lion. Just like Shakti, she was amongst the most popular figures for protecting and enforcing justice. Then we have everyone's idol. From the Loki familiar, the Sword Princess Ais Wallenstein. The cheers grew louder as her name was announced. Next we have our first male contestant from Orario, one of 4 of Freya familiar's bringer, Alfred Gulliver. The cheers almost completely died down. After all, few were fans of the Freya familiar's ruthless behavior, even if Freya herself had many admirers. Our final member from Orario is the recent rising star that everyone's been talking about, the man who conquered the heart of the Scarlet Harnel, Belle Yamato Katsuki. The cheers immediately picked up again. Unknown to Belle, a fan club had formed, and was rapidly growing as news of his heroic deeds spread through the city. The girls in particular began cheering for him, begging to be wrapped up in his tale, much to his embarrassment. Someone's popular. Please don't mention that take. Now, on to our visitors. From the far east we have the Amaterasu familiar. Please welcome Tanjiro Kamadu. Ibri introduced each member with his undying liveliness, and once he finished, the guild employees entered with a box in their hands. Through the introductions, Belle had taken particular interest in the girl named Artoria, the man who looked like a woman, called Astolfo, and the terrifying-looking man called Kratos. My name is Aina Chula, member of the guild. I would like every participant to come up and pick one piece of paper in the box. Each piece of paper has a number and will dictate who you will fight. As she finished explaining, Alfred got up first and picked his number. Everyone else followed suit and took a piece of paper, revealing their number to the guild employees. The matches were quickly selected. Hey Aina. Seeing the Renard approach her, she smiled. Hey Belle, participating in the tournament I see. Yep. Very well, number 14. All right, good luck Belle. I am cheering for you. Belle thanked her before returning to his place. All right people, thank you for waiting. I just received word from the guild. The matches have been decided. Today's first of 4 battles will be between John Kratos of Eris Familia and Alfred Gulliver of Freya Familia. Please welcome them on stage. The cheers grew, albeit mostly from the Eris Familia, as their captain made its way into the arena. Freya only said a few brief words to Alfred, of which Belle couldn't hear, but clearly had a strong effect as the Palam's spirit seemed to be set ablaze in that moment. His fellow familiar members, however, were less supportive as they threatened to skewer him if he were to be defeated and shame their familiar. With a proud march, he made his way down to the arena, standing face to face with Kratos. The foreign man looked terrifying. He was almost as big as Otter, large beard and bald head. His build wasn't any less muscular than Otter, and the red tattoo on his face made him even more intimidating. Adding to that, Kratos wore a beautifully ornate silver armor that heavily protected his waist, arms, and his entire upper body. On his back he kept an axe, a large golden sword, and a pair of blades chained to his gauntlets, while in his hand his ring transformed into a golden spear. What a magnificent weapon! As expected of these mighty warriors. Now allow me to explain the rules. It's very simple. This tournament is a fight to determine who's the strongest. Anything is allowed. Dirty tricks, magic swords, and magic. The fights will continue until either side is unable to continue or they admit defeat. Now, out of the way, the tournament officially begins. The Colosseum cheered and shouted as the two participants readied their weapon. And as soon as Ibri, acting as referee along members of the guild, gave the go, the two charged forwards. With ferocity expected of the Freya familiar, the Paolum swung his spear at Kratos, but was met with equal brutality from the buff man. Whoa, that was so cool. And he looks strong. Ara, curious little Renard. He turned around and came face to face with a goddess clad in violet clothes. Hair was raven black and tied back in a high ponytail. Her eyes were a dark amber color. But the most noticeable detail was the pair of purple wings sprouting from behind her waist. My name is Eris. It's a pleasure to meet you. The pleasure is mine, Kamisama. My, such a cute Renard. Say, take, is there any way for me to have him? No can do, Eris. Well, unless Belle decides so. Apologies, Kamisama, but I am happy with take. The woman pouted hearing that, but didn't seem displeased. Oh well, that's too bad. But going back to my captain. Kratos is also known as the God Slayer. God Slayer. Yes, Kratos was once a fearsome and brutal warrior. He was eventually picked up and betrayed by a god, and his city and family were destroyed. After that, he lost himself to rage and hatred. He began a journey, indiscriminately killing any god he met. However, soon after, he ended up killing a kind god, whose people loved him dearly. Seeing the same grief and hatred he once experienced, Kratos saw the error in his ways. Distraught, he lost his will to fight until eventually he learnt to forgive himself. He moved away from his ruined homeland and settled far in the north. There he had a son, the boy over there called Atreus. The goddess pointed at a ginger-haired boy who was leaning on the railing, his eyes full of excitement as they looked at the fight. They began traveling after the mother died and eventually made their way to me. I offered him a chance to make up for his sins that were weighing him down. So under my command, he sought out and slayed evil gods. And I mean horribly monstrous beings, like those that joined Evolus. That is why he is here to this day. After all, if he indiscriminately killed gods to this day, Orario and other neighboring countries wouldn't have let him live to this day. Such a tragic story. That it is. This world is cruel and vicious. It isn't unlike the dungeon, so be careful. Little Renard. If I may, Erisama, aren't you a goddess of discord? She looked at him with a raised eyebrow before giggling. That I am, but since descending I have come to greatly love my children. I wouldn't sow discord among them nor among others. Besides, this world is full of conflict. Plenty to go by. I see. Belle's attention soon returned to the fight. Kratos and Alfred looked evenly matched, and while the Paolum was more skilled with the spear, the human man made up for it with resilience and strength. They appeared evenly matched for the time, with both having taken only few hits. But while Kratos' armor protected him well, it slowed down his already slower body, which was gradually causing him to lose ground. Kratos jabbed the Paolum 3 times with his spear, but was swiftly dodged. The man's plan, however, was to distract him and use his magic to gain the advantage. Casting the quick chant, he clashed his braces together, releasing a golden shockwave that stunned Alfred. With his senses impaired, he didn't see the knee that crashed into his stomach. Before being punched in the face, his small body flew like an arrow, landing several meters away from their side of the room. Freya Familiar growled and stared at their representative with displeasure. Before Kratos could take a step forwards, however, the Pal-Lum was back on his feet with rage written over his face as his visor cracked, showing his glaring teeth and his blazing right eye. The bearded man, however, wasn't shook or intimidated by the scowl. He confidently marched forwards while Alfred darted towards him. The captain of the Eris Familiar deflected the incoming attack before blocking the two following strikes from the Pal-Lum. However, anyone could tell that the advantage that Alfred had was lost, and he was now the one losing. Is that all you've got, boy? Do not treat me like a child. I may not look like it, but I am 29. And I am 357 years old, so to me you're a boy. Hearing that shocked the audience, but the many gods present did not detect a lie. 357 years. That's right, the fate of one who was cursed by a god. The Freya Familiar member, however, wasn't so interested in his age and charged again, with more ferocity and viciousness than before. He slashed and thrusted his spear at the massive centenarian man. In the flurry of attacks, one of them caused Kratos' spear to rebound, leaving him exposed to a jab from Alfred. Before he could land it, however, a red aura surrounded the man, and with a mighty battle cry a shockwave pushed the Pal-Lum back. Ah, there it is. Spartan Rage. Spartan Rage. Yes, it is a skill that makes him many times stronger. Tell me, little Renard, have you heard of the Spartans? Of course. They were incredible warriors, but they vanished around 300 years ago. Wait. His ears shot up as he finally understood the man's origins. You're finally connecting the dots, I see. You mean that Kratos is one of those Spartans? That he is. As he said, a god cursed him to roam the world forever. Bell was saddened as he was excited. There were so many new things to experience, and even old legends he imagined and admired were fighting in front of him. This was like a dream come true. Knights and warriors from present and past all gathered for the young Renard who lived by fairy tales to admire. Give up, boy. Gah, arrogant bastard. Alfred glared as Kratos towered over him. Seeing as he was not going to just give up, the man retracted the spear back into the ring and instead cracked his knuckles. Making full use of his Spartan Rage skill, he charged at the Pal-Lum. Alfred thrusted his spear at Kratos, who knocked it out of the way before using his fists to punch the Pal-Lum. Kratos' knuckles smashed against his cheek before a second broke his helmet. Everyone cringed as they heard the metal shattering and the body of the small man fly backwards. The foreign man didn't relent and rushed after him. He threw jab after jab, hitting his chest and stomach. Alfred dodged the first two but felt his bones creak from the two hits that nearly broke his ribs. He tried to retaliate, but he was neither strong nor skilled in close combat, and the few hits he landed were shook off from the human. Kratos kept aiming for his body before throwing a right hook that hit Alfred right in the side of his head. The eldest of the Gulliver brothers soon found himself on the ground, spitting out blood. As he was once again approached, he swung a knife he hid in his vambrace. Without momentum and precision, however, the blade bounced off the heavy silver armor. Kratos scoffed at the pathetic attempt, and chanting the one line of his spell, he delivered a powerful, lightning-clad uppercut. Thunder strike. Alfred's body flew into the sky before landing with a heavy impact on the ground. Ibri quickly deemed the motionless body unconscious and concluded the match, announcing the winner of the first round's fight. Ladies and gents, it appears that Alfred is down. That's match. Please welcome our first winner, John Kratos. The Colosseum burst into cheers and shouts as members of the Ganesha Familia entered the arena to take the blooded Pal-Lum out on a stretcher. Freya herself and Otter didn't seem to mind, their expressionless faces looking at the man who disqualified them. The others, however, were less than pleased, particularly when Kratos entered the room. I have returned, Erisama. Good job, you have fought wonderfully. That was incredible, father. The boy, who looked just as old as Bell, ran up to the large man and congratulated him for the victory. Peace, boy, there are many strong warriors here, many of them being much more powerful than I am. Before the boy could say something else, Ibri announced the next match. Ladies and gents, Allow me present you the next competitors. Tanjiro Kamadu of Amaterasu Familia and Eric Bloodaxe of Boulder Familia. Bell wished Tanjiro good luck as his familia all cheered for him. Meeting him on the ring was a large man not unlike Kratos. He wore vembraces and a shoulder guard on his right shoulder. The only other armor he wore were the tassels that protected his hips, down to his lower thighs. His upper body was completely bare for all to see as expected of warrior from the north. He wielded a massive double-sided war axe and kept a round black and red shield on his left forearm. His most prominent feature, however, were the pair of large goat horns, which made him look like a demon. Tanjiro, on the other hand, wore the typical uniform of the Amaterasu Familia along with a checkered harari. As the two stood opposite of each other, Tanjiro unsheathed his simple yet unique black-bladed katana. He took his stance and inhaled deeply before his eyes locked onto the man. Ready. Start. Seeing as they were ready, Ibri gave the signal to start. Eric held nothing back as he began the battle by quickly chanting a spell. Seeing the man chant, Tanjiro rushed forwards, conjuring the magic around into water which coated his blade. Having the ability to chant concurrently, the large goat person blocked the attacks from Tanjiro while continuing the chant. However, the water-clad blade sent drops of water flying at speeds and pressures that scratched the large man's body. The man wielding the axe, however, wasn't fazed by the light injuries. He kept swinging the axe, each motion being dodged or deflected by Tanjiro, as blocking it or taking a hit would be less than pleasurable due to the strength of the large warrior. Come forth and wreak havoc. Harbinger of Ragnarok. Putting distance between himself and the far eastern boy, he swung his axe. The swipe sent an arc of red energy towards Tanjiro, who tried to block it with his blade but was surprised at how it went through his weapon like a ghost. Upon getting hit, however, he was sent flying back with blood spewing everywhere. The attack had shredded the top of his left shoulder. Though it wasn't too deep, the attack had affected his combat capability. Oni-chan. Bell saw the girl, who Amaterasu informed him was Tanjiro's little sister, scream. He watched in awe as the black and red-haired boy got up upon spotting the worried Nezuko. Despite the injury, the Amaterasu Familia looked worriedly as the match was already tipping in the opponent's favor. Having gained the edge, the northern man pressed on and aggressively swung his axe. Tanjiro. Ouch. That looked like it hurt. It seems like our Far Eastern competitor is deep in trouble, and as expected of a barbarian like Eric, he viciously pushes his advantage. Tanjiro struggled to defend himself from the heavy attacks, his injury taking a slight toll on his body. The red-haired boy mentally cursed himself for such a blunder but refused to be beaten so easily, using his natural ability, which allowed him to use his sense of smell to predict the enemy's movements, as well as his unique skill, which nullifies all pain, fatigue, and any kind of restriction on the body, allowing it to move no matter how tired or injured he was. Tanjiro went on the offensive. Eric was shocked when not only did Tanjiro perfectly counter all 6 of his strikes, but suddenly moved without him noticing. It was as if he had erased his presence and blended into the surroundings, allowing him to move undetected, like he had seen hunters often do. That moment of surprise and hesitation, however, earned a large gash across his back all the way to his right side. Just like that, the two were back to no one having the advantage over the other. The audience watched with bated breath as blood trickled down their bodies. The two distanced themselves and analyzed each other's injured forms, deciding to end this as soon as possible. Tanjiro switched stances. The water burst into a crimson fire as his eyes sharpened. With greater speeds than before, he darted forwards, closing the distance between himself and the large bare-chested man. Eric swung at Tanjiro in an attempt to take him down, but the surprise and the new speed made him react too late. Already within the range that Eric couldn't hit, the axe crashed into the ground behind him. With a swift motion, he slashed up his chest, leaving a searing laceration that burnt like the sun. Eric fell backwards, knocked unconscious from the attack. His axe clanged as it hit the ground, signaling the end of the match. As soon as the man fell, so did Tanjiro. He kneeled down on the ground, panting and groaning as his skill wore off. All the pain and fatigue that was nullified came back and hit at full force in that instant. All those feelings over the past few minutes were compressed and returned to him at once. Luckily his injury wasn't too serious, but he blamed himself for rendering the match harder than it should have been. Healers were quick to arrive and assist the two, as were Nezuko and another member of the Amaterasu Familia, presumably the Familia's local healer. Match is over. What a fast yet intense battle. We have witnessed a far more brutal encounter in this match. But Tanjiro Kamado beautifully displayed skill and courage, turning the tables in an instant and bringing home the victory. Bell watched as Amaterasu Familia cheered while the Boulder Familia despaired over the agonizing defeat. He certainly hadn't expected the match to go so far, but at the same time, both warriors showed extraordinary battle prowess. What was even more interesting to Bell, however, was the breathing technique that Takamikazuchi was teaching him about being displayed by Tanjiro. He also learnt from Meti that her knights could do something similar, which they simply called sword skills. Unlike the Amaterasu Familia, who conjured the mana in the atmosphere into elemental magic, the Integrity Knights conjured the mind into energy, which clad the blade and turned it deadlier than before. Ibri then announced they would take a 10 minutes break before the next match. This allowed the audience and participants to get snacks and take care of other needs while the guild employees informed the announcer of the next match. Will Tanjiro be okay? Amaterasu nodded, appreciating Bell's worry for her familiar member. Don't worry, he is a resilient child. He's been through much worse in the past. So, what do you think of the fight so far, Bell? Takamikazuchi had just returned from an overdue trip to the bathroom and feeling refreshed. He began questioning Bell. As expected, Bell was excited about the matches so far. Not only their battles, but each warrior had demonstrated different styles, skills, and even magic, well, to the exception of Alfred. But he wouldn't mention that since Freya Familia seemed to have been shamed pretty hard by that, and the Paolum wasn't having a good time with the rest of the executives present either. Bell and the two gods turned around to see the annoying noble flying over the seats and back to his original sitting place. Looking at the location he had been sent flying from, you could see a tall white-haired samurai. His arm was extended out and his hand clenched into a fist. The three approached him just as Shinano grasped Bell's arm, almost as if seeking for protection. Sanemi, what's the matter? Amaterasu-sama, apologies, but that guy was being annoying. The way he simply ended the phrase with a straight face baffled Bell and Takamikazuchi. The Renard knew why the nobles were annoying, but was that enough reason to punch someone like that guy? Probably, though it probably wouldn't just end there. And it certainly didn't when he came back stomping. You brute. Bell really wondered what kind of position his father had for him to be so brash in front not only the imperial family but also goddess Amaterasu. Luckily there was a limit to how far he could go before Amaterasu, or in this case the emperor, took matters into their hands. Akira's father, Akira Oda, or as he now learnt from Amaterasu, the current emperor, stopped the arrogant man from proceeding on with his ramble. Murakami, that is enough. You should be ashamed of your behavior. But your grace, this barbarian just punched me. Users of the breathing styles are no barbarians. You, on the other hand, have started to become an eyesore. The Renard looked taken aback from the reaction, though he also knew that as far as hierarchy goes, goddess Amaterasu was the most powerful and influential being. Below her in the chain was the imperial family, and below them were the executives of the Amaterasu Familia. Then you have government officials and finally nobles. The others below nobles were merchants, low-rank members of the Familia, and peasants. What about him? His eyes glared at Bell, finding someone else to push the blame on, though Bell only tilted his head in confusion, much to his fury. What triggered him even more, though, was how Shinano was leaning onto him while she held onto his arm. I see no problem with Bell-san. Unlike you, he not only managed to gain Shinano's favor, but Kami Amaterasu's as well. Even our little Akari seems fond of him. You, however, don't seem to be well liked by them. Akari in particular seems to be diffident of you. As I've seen, over the years, Akari has been great at judging people, despite her young age. Bell, technically being a foreign person, ranks even lower. Yet as he was favored by Amaterasu and other powerful people like the Emperor and the various executives of the Familia, he was granted an honorary rank equivalent to that of the Familia's executives, which Murakami obviously wasn't elated about. I understand that, but even if he is a Renard, he is a foreigner. We cannot trust him. With more time, perhaps we can better judge what kind of person he is. Murakami, you are overstepping your boundaries. I heard very clearly from Amaterasu and Akari as to what kind of person Bell is. Not only that, but he seems to be well acquainted with Astrea and Baphomet Familia, both who pursue to maintain justice. I find it hard to believe that he is anything if not honorable and honest. Sir Dash. Everyone, thank you for waiting. I will shortly announce the next match. Seeing as his time was up, with a low growl he bowed to the Emperor and retreated. Humiliated and rejected, there was no doubt that he was seething in rage, jealousy, and hatred. Though Bell loathed those kind of people, he did feel bad for the brown-haired Renard. The next match will be between Yujiro Kazuto of Baphomet Familia and Astolfo Alvad of Adon Familia. Seeing as the matches were resuming, everyone returned to their seats with Baphomet sitting next to Bell right after sending off her child. All okay. I think right about everyone heard what happened. I Baphomet, I'm sure it'll be fine. If you say so. Their gazes then returned to the arena where both participants entered. Yujiro marched forwards to the center and was surprisingly met with a woman. Like him, she wore a sparkly armor. Forearms, chest, and hips were protected by layers of metal while leaving the stomach exposed for flexibility, while the long white cape gave it the look of a knight. She had a black shirt and black tights that hooked to her underwear hidden below the armored skirt. The feminine look and the cheery attitude convincing everyone. She was a woman, along her long braided pink hair. Seeing her, Tiona and Loki shouted in glee, glad to find a fellow flat-chested girl. I thought you were a man, apologies about that. Astolfo was grabbing the hilt of her golden and silver blade when Yujiro spoke. Ha! The pink-haired girl looked at the blue-eyed knight before her and tilted her head in confusion. But I am a man. The arena fell quiet as the woman, now once again man, dropped the news to Yujiro and the rest of the audience. Yujiro looked shocked hearing that and tried to process the information, as he was floored, just like everyone else. He's a man. New. Tiona and Loki despaired at the fact as they were once again alone in the flat chest department. Astolfo, on the other hand, he burst out laughing. Whether or not it was the first time, he found it hilarious and had the time of his life every time it happened. Sorry, Loki, but my child is no woman. Honestly, I lost count of how many times he was mistaken for a girl. Damn you, Adon. You owe me for this. Hell no, it's your fault for being such a massive perv. If it wasn't for the fact that you're a woman, you'd have a reputation no worse than Zeus. Also, only reason why you get away with groping other women. Heh, you're just jealous you can't have your way with women like I do. Shut up. The two gods began bickering before Reveria broke it up with smack behind the goddess head. Enough, Loki, and you can't just grope anyone you feel like it. Heh, you're right. Compared to the white-haired Renard over there, I don't have quite the skill. I bet even Mama wouldn't mind letting him have a feel or two of your body. I be dash. Loki never finished the sentence as her body was sent flying against the wall. Behind. Reveria's punch arrived in an instant when her mind registered what she was trying to hint. You irredeemable goddess. Heh, serves you right, Loki. Bell in the meantime was trying to ignore what the red-haired goddess said, but his imagination let him have a glimpse of him groping Reveria, to which he blushed and furiously shook his head. Elise, Kagaya, and Tsubaki smirked seeing this and leaned in on him, which Baphomet noticed. She was sure that if Zeus saw him now, he'd be prouder than ever before. Is our bad little fox having some naughty fantasies? Elise, please. Hee, to think the three of us aren't enough. Tsubaki. We were planning on getting Ryu in on this as well, but you're aiming for Reveria. That is quite the ambitious goal. Kagaya tilde stop. The three all smothered the Renard, enjoying how adorable he looked right now. Ryu and Baphomet sat around looking and pouting, wishing they could snuggle against his warm and strong body as well as his soft and fluffy tails. This world was truly cruel and full of injustice. Astrea too looked with jealousy before realizing what she was feeling and turning bright red. Elise, you're rubbing off on me too much. As Elise pecked Belle on the cheek, many of the Amaterasu familiar noticed how Shinano pouted. Chuckles and giggles made the blue-eyed Renard blush as she realized everyone was staring at her with smug smiles and knowing eyes. Luckily, Ivory drew everyone's attention back to the arena, sparing her from any more embarrassment. Well, that was quite the shocker. But let us not delay any longer. They are on the stage to fight after all. Astolfo and Yu-Gi-Oh nodded and readied their swords, signaling they were ready. Looks like our competitors are ready. So let this match begin. Let me show you what a paladin can do. Astolfo charged forwards with surprising speed, making Yu-Gi-Oh go on the defensive. He blocked and parried, studying the aggressive style that the pink-haired man used. Yu-Gi-Oh began counterattacking as the two weaved around each other, slashing and thrusting, but neither gaining the advantage. Astolfo then sent Yu-Gi-Oh skidding back with a heavy attack, following it up with a twirl. He guided his blade for a horizontal slash, which was deflected. Yu-Gi-Oh countered by slicing diagonally, but the pink-haired paladin dodged it with ease. 4 minutes they fought, trading blows across the entire arena, though none got a hit in. Hee, not bad. But we're just getting started. Astolfo grinned as he stood opposite of Yu-Gi-Oh. The paladin sheathed his sword before extending his hand to the sky and cast a single phrase chant. A golden glow enveloped his hand before a giant white and golden lance materialized. Seeing as things were getting serious and that the warm-up was over, Yu-Gi-Oh showed the ability that all Baphomet familiar members mastered. Like Tanjiro, had the mana gathered around his blade, but instead of turning into an element, it got converted into energy. Coating his blade in an azure light, Yu-Gi-Oh and Astolfo swung again. Each hit was faster and heavier. Sparks flew as their weapons clashed, with Yu-Gi-Oh casting his short chant ice magic in the form of 5 white arrows. Seeing them arrive, Astolfo immediately jumped back to put some distance between them. The first 3 were dodged while the last 2 were blocked by the lance. Not wasting time, he closed the distance and thrusted the long lance into Yu-Gi-Oh, who had little time to react and barely dodged it. The tip of the lance still managed to scrape against his shoulder guard, leaving a deep scratch on the armor. The blonde knight stumbled back, holding his shoulder, though it hadn't penetrated. The force behind the strike made his joint ache. Astolfo took the opportunity presented to him and dashed forwards with a flurry of vicious strikes. Left and right, he pressed on with a combination of thrusts and slashes, which pushed the blue-armored knight back. Step by step, he was pushed closer and closer to the wall of the arena. Using every skill he knew, he tried desperately to push Astolfo back, but the man tanked and blocked, making it impossible. Frustrated, Yu-Gi-Oh resorted to one of his trump cards, System Call. Bloom forth, Blue Rose of the North. Enhance armament. The moment he heard the first 2 words, Astolfo jumped back with the strength of a level 5, placing 4 or 5 meters between them in an instant. Let this horn resound on the battlefield as I play a tune of death. La Black Luna. Yu-Gi-Oh impaled the ground as a giant blue magic circle expanded from the tip of his sword. A cloud of frost shot outwards, freezing everything. Reflecting his nature, the spell was to trap, not to kill. Astolfo's magic spell came just a little later. A giant horn materialized, and the moment he blew into it, its deep and thundering sound swept the battlefield. When the 2 spells clashed, Yu-Gi-Oh was shocked as the sound wave completely nullified the cloud of frost. What? When the wave reached him, he felt his soul shake. A unexplainable pain racked his body, while also feeling a fear that made him want to run. Being outside the range of the horn, the audience was only affected with the intense fear, but luckily no pain. Yu-Gi-Oh fell to his knees as he lost control of his body. How do you like my song? Ha ha, truly terrific, isn't it? Cool. Yu-Gi-Oh struggled as he looked at the relatively unharmed paladin. Time to end this. Hearing the declaration, he got up and prepared his last trump card. Having witnessed how easily he was overpowered, he grew wary, but refused to give up. The time is right. There is no moon. Fear may make my body tremble, but I'll never back down. Be released, my noble phantom. Casa de Logistil. From Astolfo's hands a book materialized just like his spear. The pages glowed, golden as they shot out and into the sky, forming a circle. Meeting Astolfo's gaze, Yu-Gi-Oh! Stood up before, raising his sword. System call. Memories of a forgotten time bloom, like ice they encase you, like frost they spread until all is frozen. Release recollection. Hundreds of tendrils shot out of his sword and aimed to take down Astolfo just as his own spell fired. The golden circle flared like the sun before it fired a beam of energy. That clash, with the tendrils of ice, the shockwave from the two spells impacting cracked the ground, the force only increasing as they both put everything they had into the final attack. The two struggled, but with the nature of Astolfo's spell and the fact that Yu-Gi-Oh! Was injured and exhausted, the balance began to shift. The tendrils were pushed back before the blue armored knight, too spent, was completely overpowered by the rainbow ray. The tendrils were swept away and the beam hit Yu-Gi-Oh! Exploding on impact. The entire arena shook from the explosion. A cloud of dust rose into the sky as the spell ended. With bated breaths, the audience waited to see the results. Astolfo stood at the edge, waiting for the dust to clear, and when it did, the silhouette of Yu-Gi-Oh!'s kneeled form came to light. He was heavily bleeding, his armor torn as his entire left chest and shoulder were not exposed. Blood trickled down his forehead, dropping onto the ground. He shakily got up, and with a last burst of strength he dashed forward to attack Astolfo, hoping to catch him by surprise. The attack, however, was slow and sloppy. The pink-haired paladin easily deflected before slicing upwards, flinging the knight over him and down to the ground. As the lancer's point now rested before Yu-Gi-Oh!'s neck, the match came to an end. That's the end. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is down. Astolfo of Adon Familia wins. The cheers and whistles drowned the arena. Astolfo raised his hand as everyone cheered for him, his smile ever present as he waved at the people watching him. Yu-Gi-Oh! Looked up and saw Baphomet smiling, yet despite that he couldn't help but feel down, more so when a certain blonde knight with golden armor was neither worried nor giving him a comforting smile. She looked expressionless as a matter of fact. Hey! Yu-Gi-Oh! Looked up to see Astolfo offering his hand. With a smile he took his hand and got up, though his head and shoulder ached. It was a great fight. Thank you. I'm sorry, everyone. When Yu-Gi-Oh! Returned, he immediately apologized, though Kirito and Bokuli were quick to pat him on the back. The others also encouraged and cheered for him, much different compared to Alfred and the Freya Familia. Bell, however, noticed how his eyes looked at Alice before looking down. You see, Bell, little Yu-Gi-Oh! Has a thing for Alice. Hearing Baphomet reveal his secret to the Renard made him burst into a blush as he rushed to deny that. What? That is not true. Baphomet-sama, please don't go saying things like that. But is it? Say, Bell, do you have any words of advice? You seem pretty popular among the ladies, already having 3 girlfriends as far as I can see. I know someone would be very proud. Bell blushed as the goddess' eyes traveled to Elise, Tsubaki, and Kagaya. But notice that, despite rejecting the idea that he likes Alice, Yu-Gi-Oh! Seemed very invested. Well, I don't really know. After all, Elise was the one who asked me out. I simply agreed. All I can say is that you have to act true to yourself, but also show them the sides that you seldom show or never show to anyone else. Finding common hobbies and sharing secrets would help build a better understanding and connection. Though I'm sure asking Elise would be better. Thank you, Bell. Heard that, Yu-Gi-Oh! Perhaps you can try that on Alice. That is not why I was interested. The goddess kept on staring with a smug smile, clearly not buying the excuse. Sure. But be careful, if you don't hurry, someone else is going to sweep her off her feet. After all, she is a young beauty with an honorable personality. Or she may take an interest in someone else. Though she may not look like it, while she is pretty shy, she is equally into romance. She might fall for a guy she takes a fancy to and end up going out with him. Belle could see it in the eyes of the knight that the image alone broke his heart. Luckily before more could be said, Ivory once again drew their attention to himself. What an exhilarating fight. Both knights performed spectacularly. But it is now time for the last match of the day. Welcome Beowulf Genera, the Viking captain of the TYR. Familiar. Facing him will be the renowned Princess of Britannia and sister of great warrior King Arthur. Welcome Artoria Pendragon of the Miss Familiar. Side by side the two competitors walked onto the stage. On one side there was a tall, muscular, blonde man with red eyes. The body was like Eric, though with a more lean type of body. Giant scars covered his bare chest, displaying his years of experience and his status. As a warrior, he walked proudly with two very different swords in hand. No armor, other than the golden wristbands, connected together by a long chain. He wore simple dark gray pants and no shoes. Artoria, on the other hand, wore a blue outfit that left her upper thighs exposed at the front and did nothing to hide her unbelievably large bust, instead showing off a generous amount of cleavage, but not too much, certainly not as much as most Amazons did. Around her she wore a red mantle with a white fur wrapping around her shoulders and back. Long, braided golden hair and vibrant green eyes that held no emotion as she marched forwards. The crown on her head showed off her status as a royal person. What caught Belle's attention, however, was the sword by her side. Wow, that's Excalibur, a holy sword forged by the ancient great spirits. With that sentence he once again caught the attention, this time from the familiar to whom Artoria belonged to. Interested, the handsome blonde man, no older than 30, presented himself as Arthur Pendragon, shocking Belle while the adjacent people giggled at Belle's reaction. Following him were 5 more people: the Miss the God, Mordred, a knight who was extremely loyal to Artoria; Guinevere, the wife of Arthur; Merlin, one of the greatest mags of all times, along with Riveria and Morgana; and Lancelot, the best knight of Arthur's order of knights. While the two participants got ready to start the match, Belle animatedly engaged in a conversation with the king. He talked about Excalibur and Caliburn, which Arthur showed him much to the Renard's glee, and then talked about the other 2 holy swords. Arthur revealed that Durandal was in the hands of the Adon Familiar, while Escalon had been lost long ago during a war. I never imagined I'd see the holy swords. What Belle didn't tell the others, however, was the thick flow of magic coating Artoria's and Arthur's weapons. He just recently noticed, but he had begun seeing things which he couldn't see before. That thing that he now saw was magic. Its flow, its presence, and the forms it took. Things which others couldn't see. He'd have to ask Shinano about this later. Sometimes it's hard to remember that you're only 14. Other times it's hard to forget. Hearing Elise speak shocked those who weren't aware of Belle's age and their awe. For Belle's achievements grew even more. Arthur in particular took interest in the matter, albeit for a different reason. To think he's 14. Almost the same age as my little sister. Yes. Perfect candidate. Hey, how about we make a bet? Artoria's expression didn't change, though her eyebrow quirked, showing she was listening. If you win, I'll do anything you want me for a week. But if I win, I want you to spend a night with me. Artoria was unmoved by the request, and though she was irritated, reacting even faster than her was her brother. The man cared not for his dignity and threw insults at Beowulf and his familiar. The god of the Viking hid his face, not daring to meet the eyes of neither Arthur nor the Miss. But what truly terrified was the glare of Belle, who was revolted by such an act. Upon noticing Arthur, the Miss and Artoria herself were surprised by the reaction of the Renard. Why does he seem so upset? Why care for someone he doesn't know? Yet why does my heart flutter? Why does such simple worry and care move my soul so much? As a girl whose brother and God were the only to ever worry about her, she had become desensitized to the concept of self-love, other than the bare necessity out of a desire to reassure her brother and God. She cared little for herself. No one in this world had ever showed such care until she laid her eyes on the Renard, who glared a hole into the man before her. Such a simple act touched her unlike anything ever before. Without realizing it, a small smile grew on her face when she faced the Renard. The Renard had caught her attention with how unusual he was. Searching her mind. For what? She remembered of the conversations she overheard from the Renard. She did recall that his name was Bell, and he had multiple girlfriends. A polygamy. Heh. Are all Vikings as vile as you? Do you think about women and sex all the time? Her gaze sharpened as her attention returned to the warrior in front of her. Ha ha. Well, when I have a beauty like you, I can't help but take the risk. I'm sure there are plenty of people who'd die to get a taste of you. If I could have you for a night, I'd be satisfied. Ha, you are disgusting. Well, either way, I have no interest in you or humoring your little desire. You are not worthy of my body. Oh well, that's too bad. Enough wasting time. For your unsightly behavior, I will finish you in an instant. Heh, let's see if you can manage to back up your words. Artoria unsheathed Excalibur and pointed it at the man with the intent of skinning him alive. Well, that was quite an opening, but they are ready now. Let the match begin. I'll end this in 3 moves. Artoria closed the distance with speed that rivaled level 6s and brought the sword down. Beowulf looked shocked but managed to react at the last possible moment and blocked the attack. The strength of the woman easily overpowered him on contact, sending him down to his knees in an instant. 1. What the hell is with this woman? Heh, why you remaking me want you even more? Keep dreaming. With her usual stoic expression and no visual struggle as her hands didn't shake, she punched him in the gut. Blood spewed out of his mouth as the merciless princess sent him flying back. 2. Gah! Now time to end it. Shine light of justice, sweep away them sinners. Smite them with the judgment of the heavens. Equitas progenies. Her sword glowed with a golden aura that upon being pointed at Beowulf, it shot out a glowing dart of energy. 3. The blast arrived before the Viking could even scream out. There was no pain as the power completely overpowered him. By the end of the spell, Beowulf's body was burnt badly, causing Ibri to call an immediate end to the match so that the Ganesha familiar could enter and take care of the man. Over. That's the end. What a merciless and powerful series of attacks. In just 3 moves, she finished the match. Let me hear the cheers for Artoria Pendragon. Cheers erupted throughout the Colosseum, of which Artoria had no interest as she immediately left the arena. With that, our first day concludes. Tomorrow we will hold the remaining 4 matches of the first round. I hope to see everyone joining me tomorrow for even more exciting battles. The next part is on its way, so unless you want to be that one person who hears about it last, like and subscribe now to stay ahead of the game. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. It's about to get epic. Thanks for listening. Catch you in the next chapter.